Good afternoon. Welcome to City Council meeting for April 26, 2022. Items listed on the agenda may be taken out of order. Two or more agenda items for consideration may be combined, and any item on the agenda may be removed or related discussion may be delayed at any time. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll have confirmation of the agenda posting and the roll call. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, the agenda was posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law, and all members of council are present.
Thank you. We'll begin with an invocation from Pastor Ed Bruning. All rise, please.
Almighty God, we begin by acknowledging your grace and wisdom. By your grace you have prospered us. By your wisdom you have engaged us in the work that you are doing, that we might be both desirous of success and accountable for our contribution or lack thereof. It is in that spirit that we gather here tonight, Lord, that we wish to know and to be individuals who powerfully, beautifully enhance the wonders of this city and the successes of it, and are significant contributors to the betterment of our neighbors and ourselves. You have given us a measure of your wisdom and your grace. We wish to use that to your glory in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our next item is public announcements. I know Linda Graham is here and has some information regarding Preservation Day.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for inviting us this evening. And I wanted to announce our Historic Preservation Day, which is Saturday, May 14th, here in Boulder City. And you should have received your utility flyer in the mail. It was very well done, and I want to thank the staff for putting this together. It's excellent. Okay, I'm just going to read a few points. Please join us for a variety of informative activities, including attend a panel discussion on proposed changes to the city's historic preservation code and learn about the local grants available to owners of historic properties. Listen to local authors discuss books about Boulder City history and important women in Nevada's history. Hear a presentation by the UNLV Department of History. Take a tour of the historic water filtration plant. Vote on your favorite entry for an art competition featuring the Boulder Dam Hotel. And view original railroad equipment that helped build Hoover Dam and discuss ongoing preservation efforts at the Nevada State Railroad Museum. And I hope you'll all join us. It's going to be a wonderful, exciting day, and we're really excited about it. So we'll see you there.
Thank you. I have a couple of announcements also that I would like to make. First is recognition, next week being the Professional Municipal Clerk Recognition Week. We have Madam City Clerk here, Tammy McKay, and her staff who do an excellent job getting us prepared for these meetings. It's an annual event that recognizes the work that the clerks do, and I would like to say my personal thanks for everything that the clerk's office does for us. Also next week is recognition of public service workers, and we've got a proclamation that went out on that today along with a press release. When we look at what's happened over the past couple of years here and the way that our municipal employees have stood up and made things go much smoother than they could have, I think this is a real opportunity for everyone to recognize the work that our professional public servants do for all of us. So I want to make sure we recognize them. And lastly, some of you may know Chris Gatlin. Chris is going to be retiring from his business out on the highway, woodchucks. I think that pretty much everybody in the community may have had an opportunity to stop in at Chris's place. I know the business will continue, but we wish Chris well in his retirement. All right, we'll go to our first public comment period. Public comment during this portion of the meeting must be on items listed on the agenda for action. Each person will have up to 5 minutes to speak. As always, we ask everyone to be civil and concise in their comments. Is there anyone in council chambers that would like to speak during the initial public comment period? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and state your name.
Kind of a first for me. Oh, picks up everything. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Sage. I live at 525 Shoshone Way. I come to talk about the proposed Shane Patton statue and its placement. I've lived here for about 10 years. I'm a retired police officer from Henderson. I chose this city about 5 years before I retired and wanted to raise my children here. I informed a lot of relationships since my wife and I, Heather, have lived here. A lot of those relationships, a common theme that we shared was a love of our country, love of our town, and Shane Patton, that family, JJ, their sacrifices, and I just wanted to show my support for the statue and the actual placement at Bicentennial Park. If that, I know it's a proposed discussion. If that ends up happening, I think it may have a great impact with our youth. There's a lot of high schoolers, middle schoolers that are very familiar with Shane Patton, his story, his sacrifice, and even the Scholarship Foundation. It's had a very positive impact, I know, on my son. He wrestles now, he's in sports, loves art like Shane did, helps Tom Devlin, went to his school, and he found enormous support with Shane's story. And I think, although Veterans is a fantastic place, and we certainly are lucky to have that here in our town, to have a statue similar to a memorial bench that has been done before in another area of the city, I think it may speak to the youth and diversify where we want statues or memorial things to remind our visitors and some of our residents of some of the great people that have lived here and spent their life and grew up here in Boulder City. And in summary, I'm really proud that this is a possibility and proud of Boulder City. I think we have a great city, great council, and I can't wait to hopefully see this erected.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, sir, in the back.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Schneider. I've been in Boulder City for 47 years. I was also a member of the Old Guard in the United States Army during the Vietnam War. If you know the Old Guard, just think of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and that pretty much, most people know that. I, of course, was too short for that, so I buried people. So I buried a lot of Vietnam veterans, 1969 to 71. I was also with JJ when the Navy tried to talk him into letting Shane be buried in Arlington National Cemetery. JJ wanted no part of it. He wanted Shane to be buried here because of his father, JJ, and of course Shane, and his other brothers. I'm getting really nervous. My point is that Shane wasn't buried in Arlington, which I would have liked to have seen, but he is buried right here in Boulder City. And so will JJ, and so will I. And I think that statue will show him the respect that he deserves for giving his life for his country. And I think the statue being in Centennial Park will show just how much people in Boulder City respected Shane, loved that man, and just show him the respect he deserves for giving the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity, Council. With reference to item 16C, this is a potential question for an upcoming ballot with reference to the 16.3 acres of land for potential development of a grocery store and associated retail sales. Accepting that this is a potential question, I think it would be very beneficial for Boulder residents to have some kind of background on what the purposes of this land is going to be and who that grocery store might be in the future. I think you probably see where I'm going with this. We don't really want to see a Walmart coming here. I think we're all agreed on that one. So I think some information to help inform the residents of Boulder, so should this question come up in the future ballots, they can make an informed decision and make a good decision. Thank you, that was all. Thank you for those earlier comments from these other gentlemen too. Moving statements, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can you state your name for me, please,
Oh,
for the
sorry.
record?
Yes, sorry, for the record, Simon Whiteley.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Booth?
Koki Booth, Boulder City resident, mayor and city council. I don't need to be here because I know you guys are going to do the right thing. But I'm here as a mom, a grandmother, and an auntie to represent for Shane Patton to put that statue here for him. I just think it's just amazing that a young man would even step forward and put himself through what you have to go through to become a Navy SEAL, let alone die, so that I have the right to stand up here and speak before you and say, please do the right thing. And like I said, I know you're going to do the right thing, but this is so important for our community. And he was such a wonderful young man and gave so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Matt Lease. I'm a 25-year resident of Boulder City. I went to high school with Shane. We were pretty good friends. Putting the Veterans Park would be a nice place to put it. Being able to put a statue in Bicentennial Park would be great with all the events and everything that come into Boulder City. You're talking hundreds of thousands of people that come through there and will be able to see it, to remember, to learn about him. I can't think of any other better way to honor him. There are 12 other Navy SEALs that were killed at the same time he was. 8 of the 12 have either a statue or a monument at a prominent place in their hometown. I think it's time that we did something for him. The Shane Patton Foundation has been working for about 15 years to get the money to do this, and after a very generous donation, they're able to do it. They also do a $1,000 scholarship for students in the high school for anything that they need moving forward to college. It's just such a great cause, and I think we can really show our appreciation to Shane for allowing us to be up here and do things like this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Lagan?
Jill Lagan, Boulder City Chamber. Excuse me. I just wanted to say that we had been asked a couple times about the placement at this particular location for Bicentennial, and because of the events, they were concerned that maybe it would cause issues for the different groups that put events there in the park. And to be honest, this particular event, Spring Jamboree, coming up this in 2 weeks, we purposely have not put tents in the area that this would be designated, just to show that we can all work around it, and it would be an ideal location for those that are coming into town. And so I don't know of any other group or organization that does events that would have any kind of an issue whatsoever. And so very much in support of this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Steve Walton. Item 14, in relation to the Shane Patton Memorial. You know, the freedoms that we've enjoyed in the world have largely been bought on the shoulders of teenage men and women, and those in those early 20s years, and Shane's no exception to that. And truly, we owe a great debt of honor, not only to those of that age group, but the career military that have represented our country and our rights in conflicts and purposes around the world. And we're grateful to them. And I'm in strong support. I'd like to express my support of the memorial for Shane. Boulder City is built on the 31ers and in great degree, veterans. We're proud to have the Veterans Memorial Hospital, or the Southern Nevada Veterans Hospital, here in town, and that's an honor to have that here and to honor our veterans in that way. To have Veterans Memorial Park here in town, the Veterans Cemetery, and to then spread it across our town to really the heartbeat, as was mentioned to me earlier, of our community, would be fitting for the way that we honor our veterans. And really that is not just an honor to Shane, but honor to all the daughters and sons of Boulder City that have given their sacrifices for our community, for our country, for the world. So that's my comment on that, strong support for that. And gratitude to the Shane Patton Foundation for carrying this forward. The second item I'd like to talk about briefly is item 15, the land management process. Some of you may have seen the email that I sent earlier in relation to this, but for the benefit of the public, I'd like to read just a couple things. First of all, I'd like to say that and I'm speaking specifically to the luxury RV park that's proposed for the land management plan process, thank you. And I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it's a win for Boulder City. I think the ability to have folks enjoy our community, enjoy the businesses, the recreation, and to come and play and stay for a day, right, is one of the themes that we've heard in the past. And I think it's a fantastic idea. I do have a couple issues with the location, so I'd like to just express those feelings here about the location. First of all, it is, while the airport has a little bit of a right-of-way there, it's right under the path for runway 15 for departure and approach. Departure, you can hear aircraft all over town when they're departing the runway, whatever runway it is. And if you're right under it, it's really loud. And the turbine aircraft, when they come in for landing and approach and landing on that, they shift their propellers to a very shallow pitch, which adds to the noise coming in. So both departure and approach are very loud, and they're only about 400 to 700 feet above the ground at that area. And so I believe that the noise would be more than just a little inconvenient for a luxury RV park. That's one concern. The other is that there's no development on that side, on the west side of Veterans Memorial Parkway. And in my opinion, that would represent leapfrog development and not infill. And infill development is what our strategic plan is all about, looking for those areas that we can fill in. And with that, it's worth noting that there's no development from the golf course to the 95, from I-11 to Boulder City Parkway. So that would not only not infill, but it would take our open land and encroach upon what we enjoy in Boulder City as open land. And at the very least, I'm sure they would build a wall around the property so that it wouldn't be seen, I don't think is an accurate statement. If you come in eastbound on Boulder City Parkway, you have that view of everything that's open there, and we value that. In addition, there's no utilities, no electric, no water, domestic potable water, nor wastewater. So all that would have to be taken from wherever we would connect across Veterans Parkway and into that area. Again, leapfrog development. I don't think that's what we're after. And leasing it, which I think is a good idea, would give us control and funding for the duration of its lifespan, which hopefully would be a long time. We would then be responsible as a city to extend those utilities, unless there's an agreement made for them for extending utilities. But generally, if it's ours, we do it. And I just say that there's a budget cost to that needs to be considered. And I think that kind of covers the summary of what I think is a concern. I think if we infill in that area between below Gingerwood Mobile Home Park and the old hangar, we could have a win-win for the city and finally figuring out what to do with our old hangar and do a public-private partnership in finally coming to some conclusion with how can we use that old hangar and make it worth some historic value to the community, some outside paths, and make that an actual historic facility rather than let it continue to sit there unused. So I think it's a double benefit to consider using that area there, which would meet the infill as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else present that would like to speak? All right. Anyone wishing to call in, you may do so at this time. The phone number is 702-589-9629. This is our initial public comment period.
Public comment.
Hi, this is Deborah Finnegan.
Go ahead.
And I would like to comment on number 12. I'm really proud of Mayor and the Council for considering spending the grant money to help toddlers in this city learn how to swim. And then, of course, I know the Mayor and the Council and the staff will put all their support behind our local hero, Shane Patton, who made the ultimate sacrifice. Plus, I totally agree with Jill on the placement of it. And my last thing is on this luxury RV. I don't know. I've been trying to read up on it, but I wanted them to maybe talk about are they going to have short-term limits on this luxury RV place? That was my thing. And I definitely do not want any leapfrog development. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to call, the phone line is available. The phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment?
Yes, I'd like to make public comment.
Go ahead.
All right. Judy DeShane for the record. I have a couple of items off of the agenda. The item number 14 on the Bistro Lights, I do not like the Bistro Lights hanging across the streets. I think they're ugly, personally, especially where we have trees, putting the little Christmas tree lights or whatever you want to call them, those little white lights. I think they do a much better job of creating ambience and a friendly atmosphere for nighttime occasions. If you want to go down and walk along the avenue, they aren't as obstructive. They light up the area you need them so you can see where you're walking and things like that. So I just think they're a much better bet than the Bistro Lights hanging across the streets. Now, I realize in some places where we don't have any trees there, you have to have the Bistro Lights, but I would not like to see them all over the place. There are plenty of trees around Hotel Plaza that we could use the little white lights that are definitely much friendlier and warmer feeling. And then on item 14, the monument, I have no problem with the statue and the monument, but I would prefer to see it down at Veterans Memorial Park, perhaps by the ball field that's dedicated to Shane Patton, would be a better spot where there'd be a lot of kids around, a lot of kids to see it and possibly offer inspiration, whereas at the main park, you aren't going to get as many children seeing it, asking about it, reading about it, one thing and another. And irregardless of where you put it, I think we need to look at, because this is not a city-owned statue. The statue belongs to the Shane Patton Foundation, which is fine, but it is on public land. So now we would need to look at where's the liability if somebody trips on it, is climbing on it and falls off. Come on, this kind of stuff happens. And what about graffiti? Who has to take care of that, cleaning that up? There's a lot of questions to be answered before we go ahead and do this, and I would prefer to see it down by the ballpark where it would be better for more children, younger people to see it and see and perhaps read and understand his story, and it would inspire them more to think about serving their country in some way in their future. And I haven't made up my mind on item 15 with that mobile park, but whatever we do with that, I certainly hope there will be rules and regulations put in, and they will have to be adhered to. None of this skirting it with, in other words, we should have time limits. How long can someone stay there like we do at the other RV park that's up on, I think it's Canyon Road. Anyway, the other RV park, not the one where people own property, but the one where you can go in and rent a spot for so long and things like that. And just the cost of what it's going to cost for the city to put in the infrastructure that's needed. So there's a lot to think about. Although this is only the land management plan, putting it on there for it doesn't guarantee it's going to be. But there are a lot of things that need to be looked at before you go ahead and approve such a thing, in my opinion. Those are my main issues for tonight's meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The phone line's available. Anyone wishing to call in, the phone number is 702-589-9629. This is the initial public comment period for the city council meeting. Anyone wishing to call in may do so at this time. The phone number 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, were there any emails received for the initial public comment period?
Yes, the first item, written public comment, is regarding item number 14 from Tom O'Farrell. He asked that the Shane Patton Memorial be located in Wilbur Square. We all honor Shane Patton's sacrifice of his life during combat in Afghanistan. Placing a large statue in a prominent city park is presently inappropriate. There has never been a discussion of whether the citizens want such a military statue placed in a park. I ask that the council table the discussion until all the details are transparent and discussed by the appropriate city committees and the public. The proposed statue would seem to be more appropriate for the Veterans Cemetery or the private property of the proponents. Next public comment is from Fred Bachhuber regarding item number 14. We applaud the Shane Patton Foundation for its work to honor Shane Patton with a statue. However, placement of such a statue in Wilbur Park is inappropriate and incongruous to the setting. A far better placement would be in Veterans Park, which is near the Veterans Cemetery. In that park, Shane's bravery can be honored along with his history of the more than 2,400 other brave men and women who served in our country and died in Afghanistan. Signed, Fred and Phyllis Bachhuber. And that's all the public comments I have.
Thank you. We'll give one more opportunity. Anyone here in chambers that would like to speak in the initial public comment? All right, we will close the public comment period then and move to approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, any changes for the consent agenda?
No changes.
Madam City Attorney?
No changes.
And Mr. City Manager?
Yes, I'd like to remove item number 2 and 3 from tonight's meeting, and those will be brought forward at a future meeting.
Thank you. Council members, any changes for the consent agenda?
No changes.
No changes.
No changes.
I'm asking for item number 6 to be moved to the regular agenda for discussion, and would therefore make a motion then to approve the consent agenda with the removal of items 2 and 3 and moving item 6 to the regular agenda. Anyone wishing to second that?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we'll go to approval of the regular agenda. Again, Madam City Clerk, any changes?
No changes.
Madam City Attorney?
No changes.
Thank you. And Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
All right, council members, any changes for the regular agenda?
No changes.
Anyone wishing to make a motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that brings us to item number 6 then, a resolution of the City Council adjusting the position ranges of the City Manager and City Clerk. I know that we were given, and I believe it's available to the public as well, an item, and I'm not sure what changes may have been occurred, why we've received it.
Right, so as part of the performance evaluations that the council performed on myself, the city clerk, and city attorney, with those increases, the 6% merit and the 2% cost of living, it did increase the salaries of the city manager and city clerk beyond the established hiring ranges that were included in the pay plan with last year's budget. So this updates that so that finance can process that increase. And then the city attorney's is still within the range. So that's the change. It's highlighted in the backup, which is page 79 of your agenda packet.
Okay, was there any changes to what was in the packet, or I'm not sure why we've received the item. I don't see any edits or changes to it.
I can tell you, because in the packet, the resolution numbers weren't included.
Oh.
It just had X's.
Okay,
There were no further changes.
all right. I would like to make note of, as I did previously on this subject, that I don't believe that these salary ranges should be included with the other employee classification and compensation schedules. It's noted in here, I believe it's Section 155 of the Municipal Code. Appointed officials are separately identified in the city charter. They have a separate way of being compensated according to the charter. And I think that we're making a mistake by including that. If it must be included as some type of classification, which again, I don't see the city charter having that requirement, it should be a separate category for appointed officials rather than grouping them in with other classifications of city employees. Any other questions or comments regarding item number 6? Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes, I mean, I guess I don't really see a problem keeping it in the comp, because it's basically an evaluation of what's happening with other municipalities around us that are similar to us, and it just gives us ranges. It doesn't necessarily tell us what we have to pay them. It just gives us the ranges so that we know where we are at, whether we're paying 50% like everyone, of everyone else, 25, whether we're on the low end, the high end. So I guess that part doesn't really bother me, and I do see that it needs to be included this time since we did increase the pay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone wishing to make a motion then on Resolution 7445?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to accept resolution number 7445.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm opposed, so the motion carries 4-1. All right, we move now then to item number 8, presentation by Dr. Selise Rayford with the Clark County School District. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Joskowski. I am the Region 3 School Associate Superintendent. I provide direct services to the Boulder City Schools. So this evening we are going to provide an update to you on the capital improvement, share with you our summer acceleration plans for the schools, as well as some highlights. We're currently working on a lease and a memorandum of agreement for the St. Jude School. However, we do not have a date for that to go to our school board for approval at this time. So once we have that information, we'll bring back that update to you. In terms of the elementary and middle schools, there will be upcoming meetings. We don't have those dates established at this time, but at that time, we'll seek input regarding whether or not we'll go to a K-8 model or whether we'll stay and remain with the traditional model. So those are the updates that I have regarding the capital improvement. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
I guess I would just like to say that just for the record, from what I have heard from just about everyone in the community who has brought this up to my attention, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of appetite for a K-8 model. So of course, I know you guys have to have your discussions and the meetings and everything, but just kind of giving you a heads up that I don't think that's where the community is at.
Okay, I will make sure I relay that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
I'd like to kind of echo that and also ask that when those meetings do happen, that we would have enough of a heads up so that we could communicate with the community so that they could come share how they feel about that.
I have it noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll add to that. When that was announced, it went over sort of like a very heavy vehicle going off of a cliff here in Boulder City. There really was not notice. I know there were some people that did know, but the community did not seem to be well informed of that. I believe that our community takes a lot of interest in our schools. The parents take interest in their children's education. And that was a bit of a shock for a lot of people. And it didn't seem to be an idea that people were going to warm up to, regardless of whether they were informed or not. They just didn't feel that was an appropriate model. So hopefully you will include us in those discussions.
Most definitely, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Just like to share with you our summer acceleration plans. We're excited in the district that all of our schools will be offering summer acceleration. It'll be May 31st through June 17th. It'll be for 5 days, and the instructional day will be 6 hours. So this will be an opportunity for schools to provide some acceleration, as well as some intervention, as well as provide some social and emotional supports. So at this time, I'd like to just share briefly with you what each of our schools here in Boulder City are planning to do related to the summer acceleration. So for Mitchell Elementary School, students will be taught in small groups based on their grade levels. Multiple extracurricular activities will be provided, including regular PE, music, and library specials. And then other activities will include STEM projects, a bike road, and possible local field trips. They will also be providing extra social emotional support through their counselor. So for Martha P. King, their summer acceleration plan includes a series of academic intervention and acceleration blocks, including STEM and extracurricular activities. They will have 4 rotations, which will be reading, acceleration, and intervention, math intervention and acceleration, STEM, and technology. There will be also 2 opportunities for extracurricular activities, which they're calling sports clinics. For Garrett Junior High School, students will be focusing on academics and English language arts, math, and science for the majority of the day, with blended activities for team building, physical activity, and interactive social activities. For Boulder City High School, students will be participating in activities that where they're going to practice their skills and promote student achievement. They'll also promote academic acceleration, and they're going to be supporting social and emotional skills as well. They'll be taught by their teachers that they're already familiar with, but just in a much more fun and exciting way.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding the accelerated classes? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. When you say that this will be offered by the school district, is this going to be at a cost or charge to the families, or is this free of charge?
This is free of charge.
Excellent, excellent. And then, actually, I guess that's really was my only question then. That kind of answers it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I know we had talked about this when in a meeting with the principals here. Sounds like a great idea. They said that the response from the students has been very high. There's a high number of students that are interested in this. A large number of teachers volunteered to do it. I think it's a great idea. We have waived activity fees for children for the next couple of years. If there are other things that we can do, we remain open to suggestion, and the kids can definitely use some extra help after what they've been through.
Well, we are greatly appreciative of your support and partnership in this, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is it okay for me to share a few highlights from the schools? They wanted to kind of share some of the things that they've been doing.
We always like the highlights.
Thank you. So for Mitchell Elementary School, they exceeded its overall growth target on the winter map in both reading and math, and they were high in both proficiency and growth. Also, they wanted to share with you that every year Mitchell participates in the Kids Heart Challenge, where they raise funds for the American Heart Association. And this year they broke their own record with over $11,000 raised. So kudos to them. Mr. Day and the PE teacher were actually slimed for exceeding this expectation, and we'll send some pictures to you for you to see. For Martha P. King, the school is currently working with the local artist, Connie Ferraro. She's adding a mural to the main hallway of the school. I got a chance to see it just last week. It looks awesome. The mural actually illustrates the history of Boulder City with a number of historically important figures and events. They also wanted to share that they partnered with the Boulder City High School to do a Pep Rally to encourage students who were taking the SBAC. The band and the cheerleaders also participated in this, and their parents were invited to provide some support and encouragement to the students taking the state assessment. They also wanted to acknowledge that the school partnered with the Boulder City Community Gardens on April 2nd to plant spring flowers and vegetables. And also King Gardens, the school garden, will be featured stop for the second year in a row on the Boulder City Community Garden Walk. They also wanted to share and thank you for allowing them to utilize the Boulder City Recreation Center for their fifth grade promotion for this school year. For Jarrett Junior High School, they celebrated basketball and went right into soccer for the very first time in middle school history. There was so much fun, to watch the kids play and learn together. They also wanted to share with you that their 7th and 8th graders on the MAP assessment, they exceeded their growth target from fall to winter. Their 7th grade ELA met or exceeded their growth targets from fall to winter, and their 7th grade exceeded growth in their science. Their intermediate STEM guitar class started building the guitars in their workshop, and I had an opportunity to check it out. It's so cool. And they're going to begin to code those shortly. So I'm looking forward to seeing the end product on that. And then the school had a day for building relationships and learning that we are better together when we know each other's stories. So they did the Breaking Down the Walls workshops, which were done with every student and every teacher on campus, and it was a huge success. The school is keeping it going and having challenges each week as they go along. And their cheerleading was reestablished for the first time in 10 years as well. They wanted to share. And then lastly, Boulder City High School. The boys bowling team won regionals and defeated Coral Academy in the state championship. And this was their school's 128th state championship. The wrestling team placed 3rd overall at state, with 2 of their students winning state medals in their weight class. The girls' flag football team advanced to the state championship game and played a tough game in the wind, cold, rain, and the snow, earning a hardware as the state runner-up. The girls' basketball team was named state academic champs with a collective GPA of 3.74. And then lastly here, the boys' basketball team was named state academic champs with a cumulative GPA of 3.51. Additionally, after winning the regional title, the boys advanced to the state championship game, playing a tough game against Elko and earning hardware as the state runner-up. So those are our highlights for the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you again for this opportunity to share our presentation with you for the Clark County School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rayford. And again, if there are things that we can do, we do have some funding available that I think, depending on what it is, we may be able to assist with. But as I said earlier, the kids certainly need a break, and congratulations to the staff there at all the schools for what they're doing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Item number 9, presentation by the Nevada Department of Transportation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Jeff LaRue, Deputy Director with the Department of Transportation, and today I'm going to provide you an update on the Nevada Sustainable Transportation Funding Study. So in this presentation, I'll discuss Nevada's transportation funding situation, the status of the funding study and advisory working group, the guiding revenue principles and revenue options, and then I'll close the presentation with next steps. Before we talk about possible funding options, first let's look at what's straining our state's transportation system today. Nevada's population has more than doubled the national average in the last 10 years. The demand for transportation, here measured by vehicle miles traveled or VMT, has increased 34% during this time frame, which is 3 times the national average. And just in this last year that we have the data, construction costs have increased 15%, and unfortunately that trend is expected to continue for some time. So we really have a lot of pressure on our roadway system, as do transit systems that have similar pressures to provide increased services. So these next 2 slides show that the gas tax is still a major source of funding for our roadways. Here you can see that fuel taxes on both gasoline and diesel fuel remain the largest single source of funding for the state. This slide is a similar breakdown, but for the counties. Although it's not its largest source of funding, it's close, so the counties need gas tax revenue to keep coming in just like the state does. A couple slides ago, I mentioned that vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, has gone up 3 times as fast as the national average. That is reflected in the green line on this chart here. Even though more miles are being driven on Nevada roadways, fuel taxes are now starting to turn down, as shown by the red line on this chart. So the gas tax is now eroding in real dollar terms as vehicles become more fuel efficient and use less gasoline. And that is the problem that the legislature was concerned about when they directed us to do this study. So here's another way to look at the issue. 10 years ago, the gas tax generated about 85 cents per mile driven in Nevada. Now in 2020, we're getting about 75 cents per gallon. 75 cents per mile. And 85 cents per mile. I don't know if I said gallon the first time, but it's per mile. This doesn't sound like much when we're talking about cents per mile, but it represents about a 13% decrease in revenue per mile from the gas tax. Nevada is not alone in this issue. All states, and that includes the federal government, are now exploring what to do for our roadway funding in a future where cars use much less gasoline, or in the case with electric vehicles, none at all. I'll discuss the status of the funding study and advisory working group in the next few slides. Excuse me. The legislature originally explored this topic back in 2019 when Senate Concurrent Resolution 3, or SCR3, directed a working group to look into how electric and high mile per gallon vehicles are affecting gas tax revenues now and into the future. The recommendation was to investigate the issue more deeply and to pull together a broad-based stakeholder committee to identify ways to stabilize funding for the State Highway Fund. In response, in 2021, the legislature passed Assembly Bill 413, which directed NDOT to convene a special committee to investigate future funding options. The legislature directed that this stakeholder committee, known as the Advisory Working Group, or I'll be calling it the AWG in future slides, also take into account other issues related to a more sustainable and fair funding system for the future. Now, these include the needs for greater social and user equity, reducing transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions, and examining the role that land use and smart growth can play in improving system efficiency. Back in their September 2021 meeting, the AWG crafted this transportation funding mission statement based on AB 413 to help guide working group efforts moving forward. The legislature specifically directed that this study examine 2 alternative transportation funding approaches. One that is already in law in Utah and collecting revenue, called Utah's Road Usage Charge Program, which is a pay-by-the-mile for high mile per gallon vehicles and electric vehicles, and a variation of Utah's program that would vary the per mile tax rates based on a vehicle's mile per gallon rate. The AWG has 29 members that have been meeting almost monthly since last summer. AWG members represent the various public, civic, business, and social sectors throughout Nevada, and includes entities and individuals with a specific interest in managing a sustainable statewide multimodal transportation network. The membership also has representation from various geographic areas and ethnic groups of Nevada. The AWG began meeting and receiving information starting last July 2021. This year, the AWG met and reviewed financial and qualitative analysis on dozens of options. Several options have been removed from the long list of possible revenue mechanisms, and in a few slides you'll see the comprehensive list of all possible options the AWG analyzed and what remains under consideration after the AWG eliminated many of the potential taxes and fees. So in the following slides I'll go over the guiding revenue principles and revenue options. To help the AWG decide which future revenue options would work best for Nevada, they first developed a set of guiding principles. These principles are used as the initial basis for determining which options should be studied further and which options should be eliminated. As you can see here, there are 7 measures, or 8 if you break the last one into 2 separate measures, that the AWG is using to help decide what to recommend for the future. I won't read them all to you, but generally they measure whether the revenue mechanism can do one of the following. Is it going to raise at least enough revenue in the future to help offset the erosion in gas taxes? If the mechanism is fair, that is, are those using the roadways actually paying for what they use while making sure that lower income folks aren't paying disproportionately more? Also, whether the future revenue mechanism can be implemented in a way that doesn't set back the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals, and can some of the money raised be used for more than just roadways? And finally, how complicated will the new mechanism be, not only for the government to implement it, but for the drivers to understand it and pay their fair share? Here's the original list of all possible transportation funding options. AWG members had many questions and concerns about several of these options as they deliberated. After a few months of analysis, followed by deliberation in both March and April, the AWG narrowed the list down, advancing 5 of the original 25 options for further discussion. The options still under consideration are highlighted here in yellow. The goal for the upcoming June meeting is to settle on the final combination of revenue mechanisms. So the next steps. So the next meeting is June 14th. The AWG hopes to refine the list of options even further and settle on an ideal combination to recommend to the legislature. If the AWG isn't finished with its work, additional meetings could be added if needed, but the goal really is to be finished in June. There will likely be follow-up meetings later in the summer or early fall to formally adopt the final report. All of the information and data will be compiled, and the final report will be drafted for an on-time delivery to the legislature fall of 2022, so this year. A final note on this study, or a final note on this project. This is a study overseen and guided by a diverse group of stakeholders. It will be up to the legislature to decide what to do with the study recommendations. They might agree with most of them, only some of them, or none of them at all. The legislature is the ultimate decision maker, and that is the place for the folks to advocate for or against moving forward with certain options or recommendations. This AWG study process is trying to stay focused on an unbiased analytics, not on the politics or policy-making process that lies ahead. So that concludes my presentation, and for more information you can visit the website listed here at www.nvtransportationfuture.org or send an email to info@nvtransportationfuture.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. One of my questions would be, obviously, as you stated, there's a decline and there's a need to make sure that we are maintaining our roadways to a safe degree. But one of the things that was mentioned here is both, lessening the dependence on, on some of these services, but also, more smart land use planning, right? More city smart planning, so that there's not a need to be, all of us would love to be behind the wheel a lot less, but as we start to head in that direction, then, we're talking about even less use of the roads. And how does that, in the end, if the goal is to make sure that our roads are funded, but we're also, one of the goals is to try to use these roads less, how does that all balance out with making sure that the proper funding is there?
That's a really good point, and that's something that is going to be continue to be studied. And so they took all that into consideration, and I really don't have any more to report on that yet, but that is stuff that they're looking into, and hopefully we'll have more to report on our next update sometime after June.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you very much. I find what's interesting is the ones that are not highlighted in yellow. The outcomes that were scratched out. And I've always been interested in the issue of social equity. And you can see that some of those suggestions would definitely penalize low-income people who could not afford to go out and buy a sustainable or environmentally improved car. We can't expect that everybody's going to go out and buy a better vehicle with better gas mileage, and that we should tax certain parts, and that you have to look at something that's fair and something that, not only that, but should residents of Las Vegas and Southern Nevada, all of Nevada, pay for the visitors? And how does that go? I've seen this list of 25 items before, and I really thought it was very interesting having to come up with something that was fair and, and environmentally sound, and yet not punitive.
Right.
So I'm really amazed. I'm really amazed to see this final list of, I know I saw some of them and went, well, that's it. That's a good one. And then you start looking at the unintended consequences. So, like I said, I think it's very interesting to see the ones that are scratched out and to sort of understand why.
Well, I think you'll be able to see all that in the final documentation, but as I mentioned earlier, one of the guiding principles really was to make sure that the mechanism is fair, and that for those using the roadways pay their fair share. So, like electric vehicles don't pay anything in gas taxes, so how do we get them to pay their fair share?
Right.
And so that's how those 5 pretty much boiled up to the top.
But you still don't want to discourage people from purchasing vehicles that get better gas mileage or electric vehicles, and say, well,
right.
Gee, we're gonna charge you, you're gonna pay the brunt of it by, having a big battery tax, things like that. But
right, we're definitely trying to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, you kind of mentioned Utah and something that they're doing. This has to be a national problem, for a problem for each of the states, actually, as we transfer from gas dependency a little bit. So have there been other states that have come up with some solutions that have interested you guys, or that have looked like they've been good solutions?
Right now, the Utah model is the one that really stuck out the most for us, especially being a neighboring state. I'm not sure if there were other states that are that far ahead like Utah is. I think it's really a state-by-state issue to take care of everything at the state level right now until maybe something comes more from the federal area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Again, appreciate you coming out for the presentation. We all know that our roads need work, and there's got to be some way to pay for it. So thanks for working on the problem.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Item number 10 is a presentation by the Nevada League of Cities, Executive Director Wesley Harper.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, professional staff. Love being in Boulder City. I appreciate you all taking some time to consider the following remarks. The Nevada League of Cities was founded in October 30th of 1959 as the Nevada Municipal Association. The goal of the association was to bring strength, political strength to the cities initially. In 1995, the league began to admit general improvement districts as well as towns. In 1997, the name was changed to the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities to reflect those different municipal types. I was selected as executive director a little bit more than 2 years ago, and now the league has 25 member municipalities. For the last 10 years or so, the league has had 2 members, 2 employees, and that was essentially the administrative manager and the executive director. During the period before I was selected, there was no executive director for about 9 months. So for that time, the staff was a staff of 1. So consistent with the One Nevada plan, we brought on a member manager, Christine Johnson, on February 1st, 2022, in order to add to the capability and capacity of the league. The purpose of the league is really to act in the best interests and provide strength to each member municipality, of which every incorporated city, of course including Boulder City, is a member. The One Nevada plan is the outcome, is the action-oriented implementation of the strategic plan. The strategic plan was born from a survey done of all membership in October of 2021, where essentially the questions were asked, what do you want your league to do? How do you want your league to perform? And really driving to the heart of how can the league be a valuable partner to each member municipality. From that survey, it created the strategic plan, which laid out the principles of the league, our mission, vision, and guiding principle. And then from there, the One Nevada plan was born. The strategic plan, One Nevada plan were both ratified by the Board of Directors on January 31st, 2022. As part of being able to deliver on what member municipalities asked for, we simply must have more capacity. Christine's role is to, in large part, communicate with each of the members and create a bilateral communication environment. Prior to Christine's being involved, it was essentially the league speaking to member municipalities, but not necessarily getting much information back. The result of that is partnerships and the value that the league could provide was compromised. We were blind to some of the needs and some of the evolving priorities that member municipalities had. So by adding this capacity, we are now able to respond directly to what each member municipality needs and serve as a partner and a champion in order to advance their interests. Specifically with Boulder City, the league has had, I would say, a more involved relationship than most member municipalities. Christine works regularly with the city manager in order to make sure that Boulder City's needs are understood and the league is devising strategies in order to move those priorities forward. During the last legislative session, the league worked directly with the city attorney in order to help reduce the harm of proposed legislation, and that partnership gave results favorable for Boulder City. One of the main aspects of what a strong league does for every member is to make sure that cities stay united in their aspirations, in their advocacy with the state legislature. This is important because legislators can be divided in their responsibilities towards their constituents. And so if you have cities that are not unified in a voice speaking before the legislature, I think all municipalities are hurt by that. To give just an overview of the One Nevada plan, it is based upon 4 elements. One is advocacy on the state and federal level. This includes being able to create more robust relationships with federal agencies, because it's the federal agencies that really set the policies and provide the funding that the cities can benefit from. At the state level, it is about ensuring that cities are speaking with one voice. To the extent that we can be in cooperation with the Nevada Association of Counties, then it's a conversation that we're having with legislators that says on behalf of all the cities and all the counties in Nevada, which is compelling when they hear that message. Communication is the second piece. Talked about the bilateral communication, and I think the importance that that brings. It allows the league to be a valuable member to each city as each city wants a valuable partner. Third is education. We are looking to create an educational training program for elected officials, both newly elected officials and seasoned elected officials, in order to raise the level and proficiency of governance throughout the state. Also, we are in conversations with those that have provided this kind of service in other places. So we are in conversations with NACO. We are in conversations, or we're trying to be in conversations with the University of Nevada, Reno with their power program. We are benchmarking with the National League of Cities and with state leagues with robust existing programs. For example, we are going to go and speak with, Observe California's program. They have a 3-day program in Sacramento where we will learn how they format the content that they use and take that information, bring it back to membership for their input so that we can tailor it for what makes sense for Nevada. Last is economic development. I have a background in economic development, having worked with the Governor's Office of Economic Development here in Nevada. This is an effort in order to help optimize the relationships between each of the cities and the regional development authorities that the cities work with, their local development authorities that they work with, in order to make sure that, again, in this space, cities' objectives are met. This effort, in order to essentially increase proficiency in each of these areas, requires more resources for the league in order to increase capacity. And so a part of moving forward with the One Nevada plan is a request to increase the dues contribution from each member. We re-examined our dues formula and essentially have, for the most part, looked to create a floor that each member municipality pay about $1,000 a month in dues. That reinvention of the dues formula, along with the contributions by the larger cities, creates the type of resources that the league needs in order to be the kind of viable and thorough examiner of proposed statutes and legislations for during legislative session, and be able to respond accordingly, as well as organize public officials, elected officials, in order to help move forward the agenda of cities. With that, I'll pause for a moment for questions. Talk specifically about Boulder City and the requested increase in dues contribution. During the last fiscal year, Boulder City paid $6,209.42 for annual dues, which is roughly about $517 a month. The request is that Boulder City pay $15,231.44 in annual dues, which would be roughly $1,270 a month. I want to emphasize that this is a request. This is not compulsory in order to maintain membership in the league. This is a value proposition. If Boulder City, and it's true for every municipality, has the experience that the league is delivering the value that justifies the dues requested under the One Nevada plan, then we certainly welcome the contribution. There are cities that, based upon the idea of this, have stepped forward to pay dues at that level. Principally Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Fallon, Carson City, Kingsbury GID, and West Wendover. There were 3 cities that considered raising their dues to the level requested by the One Nevada plan, ultimately decided not to raise it as much as we requested, but increased it over the dues that they had previously paid. That's the town of Gardnerville, cities of Winnemucca, and Fernley. So with that, I'll pause for questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I'm going to sound a little redundant because I think some of these are important questions. And one is in terms of not having it be mandatory to pay the requested increase in fees, that does not mean you lose value. You don't lose the service. You don't, it's not like a menu that if you pay this, you get, platinum level, and if you pay less, you get, gold, silver, and so on. The same services are being offered to all members, despite whether or not they agree to pay the full increase.
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman. Yes, that is true. All members are going to be treated the same, no matter the decision they make about the dues increasing dues a little, none at all, or to the amount requested. Every member municipality is important. Every member municipality is going to be in a different place with respect to this request. We know that there are some cities that for varying reasons may have reasons that they are not ready to move to the One Nevada Plan proposed dues increase, and that's fine. We don't all have to get there at the same time, and we are all still one league.
Okay, and the other question is, and we had an interesting conversation about it, is how do you avoid overlap with local and regional planning organizations, whether it's PULPAC or SNRPC or the RTC? Some of the things you've talked about, they provide, or they handle regionally or locally. How do you work with them or differentiate what you're doing from what they're doing?
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman. Right, and so there are other agencies and entities that occupy the same space that the league occupies. If we talk PULPAC, for example, they are providing, their core is to provide insurance coverage, and where they come from is to provide training in order to reduce claims, frankly. And so for them, good governance, for example, matters to them because they are insuring against mistakes in governance. So with respect to the training aspect of PULPAC, we will be working with them to make sure that we are not duplicating what they are doing, but enhancing what they are doing. There could be things that PULPAC is not providing that would still be of value to member municipalities. So there's nothing that we would do without consulting with them first. As far as planning organizations and economic development organizations, our goal is not to lead economic development for any member municipality. We're not equipped for that. There are experts that are steeped and expert in this field. We're not trying to replace them. What we are trying to do is to make sure that the relationships between each of the cities and those economic development entities is optimized. We've run into conversations and situations where the goals of those entities don't exactly align with the goals of the cities. There's some overlap. There's some overlap, but then there's also some gap. Our intention is to make sure that that gap doesn't exist. Does that answer?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that's the only. Those are the comments I have so far. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Adams.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I had the honor of serving with the Nevada League of Cities for my first 2 years in office.
Yes, sir.
It was a real pleasure. I came on board, I think, before you were had been appointed or selected.
Yes.
And so I saw what it was like when we just had that team of one, and it was a little chaotic, and a lot of respect goes out to holding it all together for that period of time. But I've also seen the importance of what the city or the League of Cities can do. It's the biggest thing being is, it's easy for some of us smaller cities. We think of Boulder City as a small city, but when you think of some of the more rural areas of Nevada, we're a big city. Yes. In comparison.
Yes.
But even then, so we can still easily be outclassed by cities like Henderson, Reno, Las Vegas, and their interests. And so I think it shows that it's really important when we have, especially the communication conversation and the dialogue that is happening between all of the smaller rural cities throughout Nevada, so that there can be that unified voice that you talked about. And then it shows the importance of it, because Las Vegas, Henderson, they might not realize why some of these things matter to these cities, but when everybody speaks together with one voice, then that kind of helps to open the eyes, open the ears a little bit more, and to listen. So certainly there is a positive to what the mission of this organization is. And I know that it cannot be done without proper funding, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. So those of us who can afford to support it, I think we should. One of my questions would be, as we talked, interests aren't always aligned, right? The interests of Henderson or Las Vegas not be aligned with the interests of, Boulder City or, Carlin, Nevada, for that matter. How does the league, since we're all members together, how does the league, handle, if there are, happen to be those inconsistencies in thought?
Thank you for your comments and your question, Councilman. Prior leadership of the league was concerned with making sure that the majority of cities were in support of a initiative or a legislative priority before acting. The way the league is led at this point is if there is a city, one or a group of cities that has a legislative priority or any other priority, then the league is going to act on that on behalf of individual cities or a group smaller than the majority, unless we have an objection by another member. So it needs to be an objection. In the case that there's an objection, then the league cannot act, but the league will ask if it can be involved in trying to resolve the differences, find some common ground so progress can be made. How that works again, I refer to the last legislative session, the work that the city attorney and I were doing together around the short-term rental legislation. City attorney made it very clear that it was not in Boulder City's interest for this legislation to be imposed upon Boulder City. So as we were doing the work in order to bring the legislature to that same conclusion, Incline Village, another member of municipality, was in favor of the legislation, and that legislation worked for them. Without a league, in order to make sure that we are speaking with one voice, we then have dissension in the legislature, and that division then probably creates the passage of that short-term rental legislation and affecting Boulder City. Because they were a part of the league and because the other cities didn't truly have an objection, as far as Incline Village was concerned, this is not something that they believed in. This was something that was favorable to them. Because they're part of the league, we could call them and say, look, this matters a lot to Boulder City. It only matters a little bit to you. Are you willing to back down and allow us to oppose this bill? Which they ended up doing. That plus other work by your city attorney created the outcome.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the question.
Again, I'll just say that I think the request is very, very modest, and the return, the potential for return is far outweighs that. And it's always something that, if we aren't able, if the League of Cities isn't able to deliver, obviously, I think we can all go back to the drawing board and look at how we can make that happen. I have faith that it can, but I certainly am in favor of supporting the League of Cities in any way that we can, because that in turn supports, all of our neighboring communities and sister cities throughout the state of Nevada. So.
I appreciate it, Councilman.
Thank you. Anyone else? I've been going to league functions for 5 years now. I think that opportunity to speak to other elected officials, appointed officials, is a great opportunity. It expands what our vision is of our own city by seeing what others are dealing with. Boulder City, with the revenues that we have available to us, we're in a very fortunate position. And I don't think it's a question of whether we can afford it. I think the plan that you have put forward is a good plan. Yes, I have dealt with the league when it was the two people in the office. They worked at different things, but two people can only do so much for an entire state. So I do support the plan that you've put together, the increase in personnel. I've spoken to you before about the concern that I have, and that is that there is a real imbalance of the dues being paid on a per capita basis by large cities versus small cities. In this case, Boulder City is being asked to double the amount that it's paying. We also, when we look at what we're paying on a per capita basis, we're paying up to 6 times the amount that some of the large cities are paying. Once again, it's not a large amount of money, but we also know this, that if push comes to shove on certain issues, the small cities are going to lose that battle against the large cities. That is part of what the league can do, is to help mediate some of those things. We've seen it many times here in Clark County where the large cities, the 3 large cities, want something to be done, and the 2 smaller cities are saying, well, wait a minute, that's not going to be good for us. And so there's a carve out based on population to say small cities get to do one thing, large cities get to do another. So I respect the work you're doing. I support the plan. There's a tremendous imbalance in the way the dues are being structured, where ours are doubling. Some large cities are paying no more than they had in the past. That's a real issue for me. And then to say, well, pay what you think you owe, that doesn't answer the problem with this inequity. So based on that, I still have a problem with how these dues are being structured.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. To respond to some of the points that you made, it is accurate that we have 25 member cities. We did not request an increase in dues contribution from 3 of those cities. That is Reno, Sparks, and Henderson. And the reason we did not ask for an increase for those cities is because they paid an inordinate share of the dues over the last 10 years or so. We believe that, well, it is likely that at some point they will join in the One Nevada Plan dues formula as well. But initially, we asked them to just stand back and not participate. Las Vegas increased their dues a significant amount. They went from just under $50,000 to $80,000 a year. North Las Vegas, who had withdrawn from the league prior to me being selected as executive director, came back after the performance during this last legislative session, and then paid dues essentially they paid a full year's dues even though they were members for only 9 months of the fiscal year. And then they also agreed to pay the dues increase consistent with the One Nevada Plan. As far as equity, I agree, Mayor, that this is not an equitable distribution of costs among essentially the residents of each of the cities. And I don't think that a dues formula with these kinds of differences in the resources of members, this disparateness of the small rural cities and the large cities is going to produce an equitable, as in every Nevadan pay the same amount for membership in the league. I don't know that that's achievable. The last dues formula didn't have equity either. The analogy that I would give is it's a lot like if you decide to fly to Hawaii and you're getting on that plane and you've paid whatever you pay for your airline ticket, which may not be what the person next to you paid or the person in the row behind you paid. The reason that you pay it is because the value proposition of getting you from where you are to Hawaii made sense to you, just like it made sense to the other people on the plane, even if people didn't pay the same airfare. That's the way I look at it, and that's the point behind pay what the value proposition dictates. If the One Nevada Plan requested dues increase makes sense based upon the level that we are requesting for Boulder City. I ask that you contribute in order to make the league strong so that we can perform for all cities. If it does not, we respect that. There are some cities that are not in a position to do so, some cities that have such a memory of what the league has not been over decades that they want to see the performance first, which is also fine. So I wish that, Your Honor, you and I could get to see this the same way. I respect that there's a difference of opinion as to how this can be put forth in a way that provides fairness to all. The reason for the requested dues contribution is practical. It is, we practically need more resources in order to be able to do the work that member municipalities have asked. Thank you.
I suspect we're never going to agree on this.
I suspect.
You know, I understand having a floor for dues and all.
Yes, sir.
But when, you know, it's like, okay, small cities, we're going to double your dues, and somebody else is being told, no, you're not going to pay anything. And I'll be honest with you, while I've enjoyed and believe it's benefited me and benefited our community to be able to go to some of the league functions in the past, I'm still waiting, because my memory of some of these is when there was no director, or a director who simply was not responding whatsoever. So I've yet to see that value. I believe that you're capable of it. I believe you're putting staff in place to do that. But no, I don't believe we received our money's worth in the past, so.
Right, and thank you, Mayor. That's been the experience of most cities, that they did not receive value in the past. And I think the simple truth of it is, without capacity, we're not going to be able to deliver value. And that's what this is all about.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Harper. And again, do appreciate the work you're doing. I do see improvements for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, the next item is number 11, introduction of Bill 1914, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City repealing city code regarding indecent, obscene language. Madam City Clerk, do you want me to do the explanation, or would you like to?
Tonight's item is simply an introduction of the bill.
Okay. Any questions or comments? With that then, I will make a motion to introduce Bill number 1914, waive the reading except for title.
Thank you. Bill number 1914, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, repealing City Code 7-1-8, indecent, obscene language in its entirety. Bill number 1914 will be considered at the May 10th, 2022 City Council meeting.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 12, matters pertaining to toddler deaths in Southern Nevada. Do we have the folks here from the Nevada chapter of the International Code Council? I know you gentlemen have been coming out here to Boulder City for some time and supporting what we do out here. Please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Cunningham. I'm the City of Las Vegas's Deputy Director of the Building Department, and I'm also the Southern Nevada Chapter's President this year. I'm also known as SNICC. So two of our main focuses as a chapter is education and safety. And so every year we've been doing this for as long as I can remember. And we're fortunate enough we have a yearly conference that provides us the funds that we give out to the entities. So each year we come out, we give $2,500 to all the local entities. So it's almost $20,000 that we give in hopes that you guys use it for toddler swim safety grants for families that either may not be able to afford the swim lessons or just to do educational materials in general for the community. And so with that, I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Questions? Again, at our pool, which has been there probably a little longer than it should have been, we've always had staff there that has taken it very seriously on swim lessons for the very youngest children. And I think that has been such a huge benefit for our city because, you know, there are a number of people who have backyard pools, and we're very fortunate that we do not see the loss of life of young children. I think a lot of that is to programs like this where we concentrate on giving those youngest children the opportunity to learn to swim. So thank you very much for the award again this year.
Say, can we get
Mr. Hall, where we're going to do a picture. Why don't we step forward?
There you go. Good luck, buddy.
Again, appreciate very much the donation, and to make that official, I will make a motion for approval of Resolution 7447, accepting that grant award.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Move now to item number 13 regarding the bistro lighting. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, tonight our Public Works Director, Keegan Littrell, will provide you some discussion and overview on the bistro lighting project.
Good afternoon or evening, Mayor and Council. As the City Manager just said, I'm here to discuss the Bistro Lights. Originally, the Bistro Lights was approved by Council with the final budget in May of 2019. We then proceeded forward with a test project, as most people know, on Arizona. We did most of the work in-house, or all of the work in-house. We had to buy materials for the project. We spent about $80,000 of the $250,000 that was approved on that project. It was just a test strip. We wanted to see the feedback from the council, the feedback from the public before proceeding forward. So it's kind of been on hold until we felt that we had received enough feedback. But now I'd like to have a discussion with you guys to see if you're in favor with moving forward. I know it was partially a previous council, so I'd like to see if we have your support to move forward or if we should reallocate the funding. I do want to mention that it was taken to the Historic Preservation Council committee in August of 2019 just to get their feedback, to see if they would be in favor of it, see if that was supportive. And generally, there was overall support. There was some concerns on the poles not matching the historic district, the color of the poles, the temperature of the lights, stuff of that nature. But overall, I think they were supportive of it. Right now, it currently goes from Nevada Way east along Arizona to just in front of the hotel. And if approved, we would either continue east to the west side of North Escalante, South Escalante, the parking lot area there, or Nevada Way, or any other direction that we get from council. So just hoping to have a discussion and possible direction.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
I like them. I like them. I like the festive colors. When I drive down there, I've always wanted more. I've wanted it to extend more. I think it ties the businesses and what we have on Arizona together. We have great lighting coming up Nevada way. And then you make that right-hand turn, and there's still businesses. That's part of the district. And I think it ties it together. And I think it's, the lights can be commemorative, the lights can be festive and holidays. And I really like it. I think it's a nice addition to the town. I just would like to go forward, to continue on beyond the street where it is. Good,
Yeah,
thank
to
you.
touch on the colors of the lights, we do have a lot of the holidays and other activities pre-programmed in there. Whenever something special comes up, someone from our public works staff will go out there and they can just tap right into it with whatever equipment they use to be able to change the lights. So.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
I agree with Councilwoman Bridges. I actually really do like it, but beyond myself liking it, I've heard really positive things from other people. And in fact, we were just down there eating the other day and with a very large group, and all of them pointed out that the colors were for Ukraine right now in support of them. And so I think people notice, and I think they like it. And I kind of feel like it's also tied parts of our community together. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Fox?
Yeah, I really like it too. And again, touch base with everybody else. A lot of great feedback from the community. And yeah, I would really like to see it extended a little bit further. And it does tie the town together with everything else that's going on.
Thank you.
Councilmember Adams?
I'll give the unpopular opinion here. You know, personally, I don't necessarily think they're the best. I think great concept. I think it's the execution maybe that I think is a little lacking. That's not to rain on anybody's parade. I do hear from many in the community who do really like them, especially the ability to use the lights to commemorate events, occasions. So, you know, my personal thoughts aside, I do know that they are appreciated here in the community. Where my concern is, you know, our city sidewalks are starting to become a little cluttered, I think. Over the last decade or so, we have, you know, started to see the signs and statues and, you know, these lighting features, and, you know, it's continuing to add and add and add and add. And we end up with some areas like the corner of Hotel Plaza, where there is a clock on a concrete pedestal and some signage and, you know, one of these light poles. And, you know, it's becoming, I think, very poorly thought out. It gives that appearance to me. You know, this community was, you know, designed by, you know, Sacco de Boer. I mean, he is a renowned, you know, city planner. There are awards named after him. So I think the more that we kind of continue to just kind of place these things without any real clear definition of what are our guidelines, what is the design, the consistency to approach. Without having that, we're going to continue to move away from, you know, that striking design that we have that makes Boulder City so unique. So I personally would like to see, before we move forward with that, it's not that I'm against them. I know that they're appreciated here, so I want to see them move forward, but I want to be sure that we're doing it right. I want to make sure that there is a consistency in thought, and so that our streets are not being cluttered. I do also think, you know, you mentioned that this was kind of a test run, you know, and that's why we're here having this conversation, to get that feedback. You mentioned that the Historic Preservation Committee, that while they were interested in seeing it, just like everybody else, that, you know, generally supportive, there was that concern of its impact on the historic district. I think it would be wise to go back to them and ask them, you know, especially now that we have Courtney Mooney on, you know, to help us, you know, establish impacts on our historic district. I think that would be an important step too. So it's not that I'm not in favor. I just think that we need to be sure that we are doing so in a thought out manner, so that there is consistency in thought and design and approach, so that they are, you know, as beautiful and charming as they can be for everyone, without, you know, further cluttering our city sidewalks.
Yeah, I appreciate the input. Yeah, we did have some difficulties on the placement. There's a lot of existing utilities out there, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't over top of them. So that was the hardest part, of where exactly we can put the poles without being too close to an existing utility, and that corner you were talking about with the clock, that was definitely the most difficult place. I know our crews thought through it the best they could and fit it the best they could, but yeah, maybe it's not always the most ideal place.
No offense to Public Works on their
No, I understand.
their
Yep.
design. Great with engineering and everything, but sometimes I think we as a city overall would benefit, and this is speaking beyond just these Bistro Lights, but would benefit from a more thought out design and approach. And maybe that's, from outside a house, if we don't have someone in house that can really do some of that city planning that I think we've been missing here for some time. So
appreciate that.
That's where my thought is. Thank you.
I did have a chance to talk over the weekend with one of the members of the Preservation Committee, and that concern was certainly brought out, that, this is not part of the original design or decor or anything to do with the historic district itself. My personal feeling is, I think they look tacky the way they're done. When we do things like light them blue and yellow to support Ukraine, that is a good thing that can be done. But there are other ways we can show support for Ukraine. I do have a very big concern as well as we go into other areas where we have the porticos or the overhanging roofs on sidewalks. What is that going to do attempting to put these poles in and stringing lights above streets? That's especially the case on Nevada Way, but even coming this way on Arizona towards California Street, we've got some of those at the Dillinger, at the Bistro, at the theater. Again, I think we're getting to the point where the carnival atmosphere is something to look at, but we're endangering the other things that are already there. In the packet, it is suggesting that this would continue on Nevada Way. I'm assuming that it would stop at Wyoming, but who knows? Maybe we'll go all the way to Buchanan or something. But I have a very serious concern about installing them on Colorado Street at the bottom of Government Park. I just find that totally inappropriate for that area. We've got commercial properties here on Arizona and Nevada Way. That's not the case on Colorado Street. And that's part of this. That's something that I think should absolutely be removed, is any of those lighting being put up on Colorado Street.
Yeah, I had originally envisioned something from around Wyoming up through where the businesses are open at night. Colorado's never been brought to my attention, and I've never even thought about putting it on there.
It's
I understand.
in there. I read it.
Yeah, no, I believe you. It's my staff report, yep. But yeah, that was not an envision that I had, or a vision that I had, is coming up and around Colorado. But that's why we're here, to have that discussion.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, I'll make a recommendation that consideration of anything on Colorado Street be removed.
Okay.
Is there anyone who disagrees with that? I also think we have some serious problems there on Nevada Way with the architecture that's already there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be difficult going through that area. It's going to have to be well thought out. Just the placement of the poles alone, we don't want to impede any of the parking spaces or the porticos. It's going to be a challenge.
Okay. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Like I said, I really like the idea. I was wondering if we move forward with this, if it would be possible for you to bring the proposed plan so we could kind of see the layout of where you were wanting to put it prior to that actually happening.
Yeah, we definitely could, and we could actually mark them out there. Because looking at a plan, it's not always easy to see exactly where it would be, but yeah, we could mark them out in the field and then take a little field trip.
That'd be great.
Councilmember Adams?
I'd also like to add that, in addition to council reviewing that also would be brought forward to the Historic Preservation Committee, being that it is in the heart of our historic district, just so that they can not only review the current impact of the current Bistro Lights, but also to review any future potential impacts in the historic district as well.
Is there anyone who would disagree with that recommendation? That's 2. Anyone else?
Do we need a motion or just the direct? Yes, I'm being told yes. Would definitely help me out.
Okay. I will make a motion that any work on Colorado Street with regard to this project should be removed from consideration. Further move that the lighting proposed expansion would be currently just on Arizona Street with review by the Preservation Committee, subject to their review, and then further direction or approval from council based on that information coming back to council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Littrell. And again, I think they're tacky, but some people I know love them, so it's not you. It's.
I don't take offense to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move to item number 14, discussion about the placement of the Shane Patton Memorial. Mr. City Manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The Shane Patton Foundation approached city staff early this year regarding the possibility of locating a memorial monument in the center of Wilbur Square at Bicentennial Park. The foundation has raised funds to fabricate, construct, and install the monument. A maintenance agreement would need to be drafted and would place responsibility for the maintenance repair on the foundation, along with expectations moving forward in the future. This request, their formal request, is on page 139 of your agenda packet. Currently, the city has no formal policy or mechanism in place for locating a permanent structure or monument on city-owned land or facilities. However, we do have a naming of city assets policies, which is also included in the backup materials. Understanding this is proposed as a 1.5 times life-size memorial along with a pedestal and surrounding benches. In consultation with my department directors, staff do believe it would be appropriate if it was simply life-size, and an optimal alternate location could be Veterans Park, fitting with the mission of that park. If Bicentennial Park is ultimately the location chosen, the Historic Preservation Committee will need to provide input before an agreement could come forward for your approval. Tonight, city staff are seeking preliminary council direction regarding the location, size, and any additional information related to the request that you'd like to see regarding the monument. Representatives of the Shane Patton Foundation are present tonight to directly address any questions or comments you may have, and I'm also standing by to answer any questions that you might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I'll start. I have some questions and concerns. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm going to start out with that. My first concern has to do with, and maybe this is the committee's answer, to find out an answer from the committee, and that is, who would you want to be, I'm not going to use the word target, who would you want to be the group of people to come and appreciate this? And I'm thinking, we have a lot of events that we do have events that go on in Bicentennial and Wilbur Park. But for the most part, it's local residential people out there walking dogs, hanging out. There's not a lot of activity out there when we're not having special events. So I was wondering, is it to assume that having that there is going to draw people to come visit it? Or, somebody said, have it down by at Veterans Park or by the fields where kids could come look at it. That's just one of my questions is who is it anticipated would come to visit it? I'm secondly not sure of the size. I know that this is a significant story and a significant person, It's a big statue. And I'm not sure. I've listened to what everybody's had to say, and I think it's a compelling story and it's a compelling person. And my question is it the right size and is it the right place?
Councilwoman, I'll go ahead and call up Mr. Turner or any other representatives that could speak to that for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chase Patton. Shane Patton was an older brother of mine. I'm from the Shane Patton Foundation, of course. Joel Pepper is also a member of the foundation. Sonny Latham, Grant Turner, Biker Pat here, and also with me is Victor DeCosola from the Tactical Night Vision Company. Before we get started, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank everyone who showed up tonight to offer support for us, and then also to everyone who spoke earlier in the open comment section, the phone calls and the emails as well. I'd also like to thank everyone who has ever bought a shirt from us or has attended an event. There have been hundreds, even thousands of people who have donated their time and their money to the Shane Patton Foundation the last 15 years that we've been in existence. So I'd like to extend, a great thank you to all of them, because without everyone here, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this. We would especially like to thank Victor from Tactical Night Vision Company for his incredibly generous donation, which has put us over the top of allowed us to proceed with the full steam ahead with our dream of erecting a memorial in our hometown of Boulder City. The foundation was formed in 2007. We've been awarding college scholarships to the local Boulder City High School students ever since that. In addition to tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships donated over the years, we've also bought uniforms for the Boulder City baseball team. We've also even set aside provisions in our budget for if the school needed additional uniforms going on, in the future, we'd be okay with providing those as well. On those uniforms, Shane's jersey, Shane played baseball at the high school as well. His jersey was retired and I believe hangs in the gymnasium now. He was number 2, and the the uniforms that we provided for the baseball team have a number 2 on the sleeve in honor of him. Another point I would like to make is that we're also proud to say that the 100% of all the money that we ever raise or receive also goes back into the foundation. None of us here draw any sort of a salary or anything like that. I pay the same amount of money for a t-shirt every year as everybody else does. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. I'd like to turn it over to Victor from Tactical Night Vision Company who'd like to say a few words, and then we'll open up for your guys' questions and to answer some of the questions you guys had earlier.
Honorable Mayor, thank you. Honorable City Council, City Attorney, City Clerk, City Manager, thank you very much. Council Bridges, you were very correct on talking about this as a very compelling story. I surround myself for the last 16 years with special operations personnel. I'm a former police officer, a veteran myself, and I'm humbled each and every day of the folks who I surround myself with. 3 times in my life there has been divine intervention that I talk about that has saved my life, and there's a compelling need, and I use your words, Counselor. It's compelling to me when I came to Boulder City and moved here. Mr. Mayor, I met you about a year ago at the Arts and Crafts with my lovely wife. And you're gracious enough to give me a follow-up letter and inviting me to be part of a committee and volunteer my time. I'm going to take you up on that. I've just been a little bit bitty with 33 employees and running with my hair on fire for 16 years. But I can tell you that Boulder City is a very special place to me. And when I came here and built my home, had it remodeled, I should say, around 3.5 years ago, there was compelling and very much coincidence and divine intervention that brought me here. One was just the location, the low crime, the personnel, and being here remodeling my home where my wife didn't think I was going to come home for 4 months during the babysitting and remodeling. But at that time I got to donate a lot of money to local restaurants and found out in looking at pictures of NSW officer, NSW I should say operator, named Shane Patton. I didn't know who it was. I just knew that he was on the walls of a lot of establishments. And then I found out that the person who actually built my home was a gentleman named Mr. Turner, who owns a lot of restaurants. All the puzzle pieces started falling in. I asked a lot of questions when I met Mr. Turner. I met his son, Grant, and found out, I asked who Shane Patton was. At that time, I was told who Shane Patton was. I'm very, very familiar with Operation Red Wing in 2005 in Afghanistan. I understand why they were there. I understand we had to fight the enemy there instead of bringing them here to America. At that time, I knew my compelling need. I found my home. I knew I found my home a year ago when we bought our home out here, but I knew divine intervention brought me here and to support the gentlemen that are behind me. I see advertisements on television for the Wounded Warriors and not taking anything from them, but I can tell you what Chase just said is very true. When I donated the money, there was not a fear and a substantial amount, I may say, and that's not to pat myself on the back, but I believe in this organization, and I'm humbled with these gentlemen behind me, including Shane's father. They are special warriors in themselves. I'm proud to be a resident here. I'm proud to call these gentlemen my friends, and I can tell you they are the most honorable people I've ever met in my life next to the special operations person. There's no surprise that Shane Patton came before them and gave him the ultimate sacrifice. So I'm not up here to judge. I'm not up here to decide locations. I just know that the people behind me are very honorable, and you can trust everything they say comes to the bottom of their heart, and they mean what they say. Thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges, did you have anything further?
No, I was just, I did have a question, in which was, in terms of location and scope, I was just curious what you had in mind in terms of the people who would be coming to visit the sculpture. Was it, you know, is it to have, when people come to town and they're involved in other things, to have it there? Is it about having a special way of people finding out that they should come there? Is it better placed somewhere? And I don't know the answer to that. I want you to tell me the answer to that. Does it belong somewhere where there are going to be more students and kids hanging out, people to learn the story? To, you know, that's part of what I read or heard, was this was about the story and about getting to know the person. So that's my question: is was there thought in terms of who would this draw? Is that the right location to draw people to that spot, to that statue?
Yes, absolutely. Our goal was for it to be in the park across the street here, for one of the purposes being that, I mean, it could draw anyone. Our goal is for this statue to draw inspiration, motivation, courage, and things along those lines for future generations that may want to take a look at it, learn about the story and all that. One of the other main goals that we would like for it to be in this area is also to help drive, people through town more, and hopefully patronize our businesses up in this area, and basically just to get as many eyes on it as possible. And obviously, this is something that is huge for my family. My great grandfather, his name was Harry Hall. He was also a 31er. So my family has been here since the beginning, really, of Boulder City. Both of my grandparents graduated in Boulder City High School in 1955 and 1956. My father and his siblings graduated in the 70s. I graduated in the early 2000s. Shane also graduated in the early 2000s. There are 3 generations of us here from, in Boulder City that this would mean a heck of a lot to. And our whole goal really is just to draw the most inspiration we could possibly get and hopefully inspire. And we don't want this piece to be up here in the park to really make anybody sad or depressed or anything. We want this to be a solid motivational piece for future generations. Of course.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say in reading this, I have a grandfather who fought in World War II and left a wife and 3 kids behind to fight in the foxholes in the Philippines. And he was blessed to be able to come home, but there were long-term effects with that too. And that when someone goes to serve our country, it's in place of us if we don't go.
Sure.
And I have a deep debt of gratitude for what you and your family have offered for us to be able to have the freedoms we have today.
Thank you.
I don't mind where it's at, and I don't mind the size. I like what it represents. I love what you just told me about your family and how long you've been here from the very beginning, actually, and that you did give everything that you had. And I like the idea that he came back here, home, to rest. And so I like the idea of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Fox?
Thank each and every one of you guys for everything you've done with the foundation and the community here. You guys do a lot, and with the school, the scholarships, you guys do an amazing job. So thank you.
Thank you.
I love the size of it. I love the location of it. We have so many events right there in town. I think it's perfect. I know staff, their concern was with the size. Would making it life size, if that was an issue, be something we could drop down to, or is the 1.5 times where you guys are set?
It's more of like where we're set at. 1.5 times is generally the typical standard of which these types of statues are constructed around.
Yeah.
In our personal opinion, maybe for some of us, we think the statue could have been 7 or 100 times bigger. But we would like to just settle for 1.5 times. But the statue itself will be less than 9 feet tall. The overall height would be approximately 11 feet. We did some measuring in the area. The turbine that is over in that area on the side, on the highest point, since the turbine's a bit on slope, it's about 10 feet tall as it stands. Some of the trees that would be directly behind the statue are over 25 feet tall. So we just kind of want it to be 1.5 times, so that in the event that, I don't know, more vegetation or anything like that gets put in that area, we wouldn't want it to be overshadowed or drowned out or get lost within the park itself.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. No, I love it. Like I said, I like the size, and I would love to see it sitting over there for the world to see. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. First, of course, thank you for all that you have done to serve the community of the foundation itself. Obviously, it's important, I think, for this community to honor and recognize, those who have, paid the ultimate price, given the ultimate sacrifice, so that we all can be here continuing to live freely. It's really, really important. Because of the weight of that importance, it's also really important that we approach this in a well thought out, planned manner. So I'm hopeful that we can move forward with this memorial. Some of the questions I did have, we've been talking about size and scale. I think you said the overall height of the monument would be 11 feet tall?
Approximately around 11 feet, from the existing curb,
And, it's got a wide base. Do you know roughly what the width of that base, or the overall surface area that we're talking about that would be impacted?
About 70 feet.
It's 340 square feet.
340 square feet.
340 square feet. Thank you very much. And the types of material that are going to be used, I'm assuming a bronze statue?
Actually, bronze, yeah. It'll be a bronze statue.
Bronze, concrete. I'm just.
It would be, bronze, some concrete obviously around the foundation of it, and also some red paver bricks and things like that. Actually, a purpose of this part of the design is that from an aerial view of the statue, it does emit like how Red Wings look, being is that this is a part of Operation Red Wings is what Shane was a part of. And then we also made sure to take into consideration the current sidewalks and things like that, and we wanted it to be able to integrate as seamlessly as possible within the park. We didn't want it to be any kind of a structure that would interfere with any kind of current walkways or any kind of structure that's there currently.
Gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then as far as, names and inscriptions, and these are, I'm asking questions now because, as was said, should it move forward here or likely anywhere, we'll need all this information, but
Sure.
Inscriptions and names will also be included on this monument as well?
Yes, sir. So in the right in the front of the statue will be a plaque that's a part of the pedestal he'll be standing on. That plaque will have a description of Operation Red Wings and kind of that mission and how it took place. There will be 2 benches on either side of it. Those benches will have names of the Army Night Stalkers and the other additional Navy SEALs who also lost their lives that day.
And then is there any intention, I know you mentioned, the not wanting to take over or have it be overshadowed, but is there any intention to have additional landscaping or anything to enhance the monument site itself, or?
Maybe possibly just like some lighting and, lower, maybe just to, I don't know, cast some light maybe in the evening time, something like that, but nothing any more than that.
Obviously, I know Wilbert Square is the desired location. I get why it's the heart of our community. It's, it's the centerpiece of a lot of the cherished events here in town. But, something like this would, I don't want to say take away from the historic origins of the park, but it would impact it,
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've discussed why it is really important to you to be there. And again, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be there or it doesn't need to be there, but just because these questions will be asked and be considered as this process moves forward. But consideration for Veterans Memorial Park, where I think something of this size, this stature, certainly is very more than reasonable. As you said, a 700-foot statue probably would be more fitting for the importance and weight for some in the family, but also to serve as a centerpiece and a focal for that park, in which potentially future, because the others have given their lives here in Boulder City as well, and we should also be recognizing them too. And so this could be just the beginning of a focus on making sure that our veterans truly are memorialized. I'm not suggesting that it has to be there or it can only be in one type of location, but is there any willingness, because as we go through this process, there is going to be a lot of conversation amongst the public, amongst the different committee and commissions that might review it.
The statue in that area is basically our main point. Yeah, that's exactly where we would like it to be. Yeah, I mean, straight up. That's exactly where it is. It's our main location. It's the only place that we've considered. We don't want it. Kind of the same thing. We don't want it to go down in the veterans area to ultimately end up being lost amongst other structures that are already there, and people just kind of walk past it. I mean, I know that generally the type of people that go down and look at veterans, but that only really draws like that type of crowd. I'd like to have a different type of crowd, all walks of life, to be able to look at this thing and to be able to admire it and draw their courage and stuff like that from it as well.
Understood, absolutely.
Yeah, it's more about like reaching a broader spectrum of people.
I understand, thank you. And then, as was pointed out for staff, I know there was, the point that there is no real formal process that we have for, the designation of these monuments, especially those that, aren't donated to the city. The intention obviously would be for the foundation to maintain the statue and everything like that. I do think that it would be important for us to have, formal guidance and everything like that, so that as this process moves forward, everybody, all parties know that it's being done in a thorough and fair process. I know looking at the size and scope of this, it would probably be a tremendous amount of effort going into this and time. So we don't want there to be any surprises along this process. So I do want to make sure that it's government has an issue with being a little bit slow moving, but there's a reason for it. So I do want to make sure that we do follow some form of formal process and guidance. Again, that for just as much for the city's protection as much it is for the foundation's protection as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think part of that process does need to be sure that we have, included, all of the information, that I was asking, the height, the width, that square foot coverage, what those inscriptions would say, what those names would be, just so that we have all of the information. I also think once we have that, then, it could be reviewed by our departments, reviewed by, I think an impact like this in a park like this should probably be reviewed by our Parks and Recreation Commission, since I think it would, like I say, shift the focus a little bit from its historic origins more to this as a memorial to Shane. I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but that impact should be reviewed. And because of its location within our historic district, I think it's also important that our Historic Preservation Committee, also weigh in. This isn't to try and say, this isn't going to be what you guys are going to get. This is to say that there are going to probably be a lot of recommendations on how to lessen that impact, but also to make sure that we are honoring Shane in a way that is fitting to his sacrifice.
Absolutely. That's why I think we'll always have, and we have no problem handing over our phone numbers and any kind of questions that anybody else has, or providing any sort of additional information. And as far as along those lines, we have no problem being as transparent as possible to help with answering a lot of those questions.
And then ultimately, that way we can have a site plan, we can know what the, do a site study. When I say site study, I mean the nuts and bolts, is this going to impact, landscaping, irrigation, those types of things, so that we all understand what the impact is going to be.
Yes.
Ultimately, I do think this monument is fitting for the community, and one certainly deserving of support. There has been concern raised regarding the scale at this current site and location. I know there's a small number of them I've heard personally. I know it can be hard for some people. They don't want to, sound like they're raining, that they are in any way trying to dishonor the memory. Sure. And certainly everybody who has reached out to me, both privately and publicly, everyone supports that we should recognize this. There's just a difference in opinion in what they feel is the best way that the city can do this. I absolutely understand where you're coming from on this. I just want to make sure that we can get the community on board as well. And, I think as long as we can all move forward together, in a thought-out approach, make sure that all considerations are being weighed, so that ultimately we reach a meaningful monument that, as I said, is deserving of Shane and everything that he did, and so that we can get there to having this monument here. So I'm happy to see it coming to this stage. It's going to be a process, which I'm sure you guys understand, but it's part of the making sure, as I said, we get it right, because the weight of importance is just that.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely understand.
Thank you.
Joel Pepper, Shane Patton Foundation. Just to kind of address some of the 1.5 times size. Shane was like 5'11". He wasn't the biggest guy. So, 1.5 times size is, it's not going to be much bigger than this, him standing there. One thing that we another reason why 1.5 times size works is that he should not be any smaller than any man who approaches him. He was a big guy. We're honoring him. We feel that 1.5 times is the appropriate size. Like I said, nobody should be taller than him at that point.
I understand, and my comments are not to discourage you. It's to, that those are concerns that will be had, and questions that will be asked, and something that at the very least should be considered to make sure that, again, because the point here, I think, is to get everybody on board, because everybody is there. We need to recognize Shane. It's just making sure that we all get there together. And I'm not saying that might not mean, once we actually see the height and the dimensions, the renderings definitely help. Once we get a little bit more of that, that also helps understand the comfort level of where it's going to be. Something I think is also worth considering. I know you said you don't want it to be blockaded, by all the vegetation. You want it to be a focal point. In my opinion, this is something I talked about earlier with regards to city planning. That center point in Wilbur Square, in my opinion, has become overcrowded with, there's a drinking fountain and a signage, and, there's a lot of stuff going on there. If it is to be there, it might be a way in which we can create, that more as a centerpiece or focal point, and, eliminating again some of the clutter and making sure that it is, properly presented in its place of prominence. I know something that was suggested when I was speaking to a veteran earlier this weekend about it, that likely there should be a flag and maybe, lighting as well. That was their suggestion. I'm not saying, what you guys have to say, but, these are the types of things to be considered when we're talking about location, size, and all of that sort of stuff. So again, I think we can and should move forward with this. I think we need to be sure that we do so in an appropriate, well thought out manner that, provides the public with ample opportunity to provide their input, and so that we all can understand and know exactly what we are trying to move forward with.
Thank you. Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this over this weekend, and Mr. Patton, I don't believe we've ever met, but your uncle and I were classmates. I grew up just down the street from your dad and Tammy and Shannon. I never met Shane, I'm certain of that, but I've heard from a lot of people that he was a special individual. And I certainly respect the service that he provided for our country and the fact that he lost his life doing that. That can be an honor, but it's certainly a tragedy for the family. So I do appreciate that part of it. I know I've been hearing of this project for several years now. I'm very glad to see that it's gotten to the point that it's at. I think that having something like this is important for the community. Something that I was thinking about over the weekend, just on 7th Street, which is only 3 blocks long. It's one of the only streets in Boulder City that's only 3 blocks long. I had a neighbor named Denny who was in Vietnam. He was a door gunner in Vietnam. RPG hit the helicopter and devastated his body. He came back, but several years later he wound up taking his life. Another neighbor who was a civilian, he had been in the military, but he was a civilian at the time, also served in Vietnam, was captured and was one of the longest held prisoners of war during the Vietnam War. He was held captive for 7 years. He came back, and I didn't know him very well before he had left, but certainly he was a changed person when he came back. So any of these wartime experiences for anyone can be devastating. We're seeing on the world stage right now in Ukraine what's happening. Just devastation, and certainly heroes, unsung heroes, are really making a difference over there. I have been down to our Veterans Cemetery several times. I was certainly not aware. It came as a surprise to me. There are more than 45,000 veterans lying in rest at our Veterans Cemetery. We have the Veterans Home here that I believe there are some 120 veterans or their spouses or family members who use that facility as well. I think that as a community, we've done a tremendous amount for our veterans, and we should. They're important. My father, my grandfather were both World War II Navy veterans. I grew up, I was just young enough, and I do believe it's fortunate. The draft ended 3 years before I turned 18, and Vietnam ended the month before I turned 18. But I certainly knew an awful lot of people who went and served in Vietnam. That was a tough war as well. I think that Afghanistan certainly has a lot of similarities to what happened over there as well. I certainly support the foundation that you've been doing, everything you've been doing with it. As far as the size of the monument, I think that's appropriate depending on where it's placed. The whole thing would be a question of scale as far as where it might be placed. I do feel that Veterans Park is the more appropriate location for it. We have another Matthew Commons, who was an Army Ranger who also gave his life in service over in Afghanistan. We do have a memorial down there for Mr. Commons as well. I would like to see the city develop something that at Veterans Park where we have something like a Walk of Heroes or something of that nature. My family is originally from the New England area. And when you go to New England, you can see memorials and statues all the way back to the Revolutionary War there. I happen to live on a road where my sister lived. It was called Stark Road. And there was a monument. Unfortunately, it had become kind of overgrown over time. It was General John Stark. And I did a little research, found out he was one of the heroes of the Revolutionary War. And unfortunately, that had fallen into disrepair. It was 200 years later, more than 200 years later, and the Daughters of the American Revolution kind of adopted it and, really did some great work on there to honor somebody who had been gone for over 2 centuries, but still deserved a memory. So I very much support seeing a memorial. As I said earlier, everything I've heard was that Shane was an outstanding young man. I'm just concerned about the location of it. As has been mentioned before, Wilbur Square, it is the centerpiece. If you look at the original drawings that are done of Boulder City, that was certainly the focal point of the town. But the history that I've read talks about that park as being a celebration of life for the residents of Boulder City. There was very little vegetation here when the dam was being constructed. It took, time to get all of that done. I've read histories of on Friday and Saturday evenings, the town would turn out in Wilbur Square Park because that was the place for them to come together as a community, enjoy each other's company. I think that we have something there that we should continue on with, but we've created another place where we can pay honor to our veterans. And, unfortunately, we've had several of them, and some of them have also given their lives. But Shane, as I said, is everyone I've spoken to, yes, he's somebody that this community should always remember. So I would like to see that happen very much. I just think we have a ball field down there at Veterans named for Shane. We have some other things down there honoring our local veterans, that would be the more appropriate location. Mr. Turner?
Grant Turner, Shane Patton Foundation. I certainly appreciate the sentiment, and it's not lost on me that Veterans Memorial is an appropriate place for a monument for somebody such as Shane. Anecdotally, I haven't been to veterans other than to go to Shane's grave. I haven't been there in, I don't know, maybe twice in a decade. Conversely, Art in the Park sees 100,000 people come to Wilbur Square. Spring Jam draws a tremendous number of eyeballs. Car shows. We look at this site as a place to congregate in advance of the Shane Patton pub crawl, a place where people can gather, pay their respects in close proximity to everything else that downtown has to offer. We've gone out of our way to make it appropriate for the surrounding park. It's very minimal impact, only 340 square feet. Works with the existing contours. It's symmetrical. We understand too that yes, the Matthew Commons does not have a statue in Government Park. I'm not aware of anybody also asking for a Matthew Commons statue in Government Park. And a point that was brought up to me earlier today was, how do you pay respect to somebody like Matthew Commons? And I think that's a really valid point. And in addition to the servicemen that died alongside Shane. I think it would be appropriate to leave space, maybe additional benches or provide some opportunity to pay respect to not only fallen servicemen that have already passed, but unfortunately, Shane's not the last American and certainly not the last Boulder City resident that's going to die fighting for our country. So we really did put great consideration into this. We did consider veterans. We considered every possible location for a statue such as this. And I honestly, I feel like, first of all, I was moved, Mayor, by what you said, and I feel like you made the case for us. That is where Boulder City residents came to congregate. It's where they continue to congregate. It will be relatively low impact relative to events like Art in the Park, where people get flooded.
Yeah, I would just say you misunderstood what my meaning was.
No,
Please go
I got
ahead.
your meeting.
Please go ahead.
The clip out of there was that, yeah, this is the epicenter of Boulder City, and I believe that that's where Shane's monument deserves to be.
Anyone else from the foundation who would like to add anything? Yes, sir, go ahead. Please come forward.
Patrick Schneider. Going back to Arlington National Cemetery, 380,000 veterans are buried there. Very few monuments, but there are some. And who gets to choose who gets the monument and who doesn't get one? And in my opinion, if you know anything about what happened to Shane, I think he deserves to be there. And Boulder City is a very veteran-centered city. Lots of people come to Boulder City, for instance, just to go to the coffee cup because they have that miniature. They have that picture of Shane in there, and there are tons of stuff on and around the picture because people come here from all over the country and they see it and they put something there for Shane. As far as away as Long Island, New York, where Mike Murphy was from. Shane died a hero. If you know anything about how he died, you know that that young man needs to be recognized for what he did. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council members, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I like the idea that Councilman Adams had about getting some. I agree. It's important. I do think it's important also to get feedback from our Historic Preservation Committee, from Parks and Rec. This does have a huge impact. It has an emotional impact, granted, absolutely. But I think it's also important to take a look at the environmental effect. In terms of historic preservation, this is a historic corner of our community, and also any effect from the Parks and Rec. So I think that would be a next step that I'd like to see, just in terms of feedback from them. Whether I mean, any part of Boulder City that's in the historic district, if we want to make any changes, we're really talking about the importance of having feedback. And, and they're also, and not necessarily have to send out a letter, but also any members of that community who live over there, the impact on them. But I think more to me, it's the historic preservation and Parks and Rec, just to make sure that, is this the right place?
Time. Thank you again, Councilman Bridges. Remember, this is a very historical event. What happened in Operation Red Wing in 2005 was very, very historical. Since 9/11, Our purpose in Afghanistan was just that, very historical, to make sure the war stayed in Afghanistan, not to come to Boulder City, not to come to Las Vegas, not to come to the city of New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. It was to remain in Afghanistan in the Middle East. That day was very historic. His life was very historic. And I only add this, when you think about this and goes to committee, think about that historic event. And historically, this is the right place to be. Historically, what happened, that mission, the mission that they took was historic beyond anything else. It preserved what we needed to preserve to ensure the enemy stayed at bay in Afghanistan. And we succeeded at that, right, wrong, or indifferent. We haven't had a major attack in the United States since 2001. It's very historic. We need to make sure it's preserved in a historic location. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. I guess I'll just add that I think part of the purpose of having it going before Parks and Rec and the Historic Preservation Committee is to get their feedback, is to understand what the impact is. Also, I think a very important aspect of that is it also allows for more opportunity for the public to provide comment, to let us know where they're at. I understand why this is so important to each and every one of you. And so I am not here to try and squash those or dreams or anything like that. But we have a whole community here that we need to be sure that we hear from. Maybe they will be there and show up for support. There also might be some who don't want it. I think, we've already seen tonight that, everybody wants to see something of the stature and prominence that Shane's memory is deserving of. There's going to be a difference of opinion on what that is. Part of going through this process will be to make sure that we are listening to our committees, recommendations from them to understand the impact. It doesn't mean that we have to go along with those recommendations, but it means that we will have the information with which to base decisions off of. But for me, the most important aspect is that allows that much more time for the community and for the public to provide its input. And that, to me, is ultimately what we need to do. So it would be, what I think in the best interest is for the staff to, create a formal guideline to, I guess, to whether that needs to be brought to us so that we have a formal guideline so that, again, as we talked, that there's no surprises for you guys, that all parties are aware of what the process will be so that it is fair and evenly handed out. And so that once that could be completed, it could then be reviewed by the appropriate committees, the department staff to review everything, all the pertinent information provided, and then allow for the public to comment, to put in their 2 words about it as well, and then ultimately have that come back before us so that we can make a final decision on just that, the location, the scale, everything like that. And as I said, I think there is no reason why we cannot have a monument deserving of Shane's memory here.
Anyone else? Would you prefer a formal motion?
A formal motion would be great. You can include having us create a policy like that, or you could simply direct staff to send this proposal through the appropriate advisory boards and committees. Open to your suggestions.
Well, I think Councilmember Adams has probably detailed a procedure, probably the best. If you'd like to form a motion, Councilmember Adams?
Sure, I would like to make a motion to have staff draft a formal guideline as we have similar to with the naming that was provided. I think some of the most important things are to be sure that dimensions, footprint, inscriptions, that sort of information would be provided so that it could then be reviewed by the appropriate departments and then further reviewed by any of the pertinent advisory boards. In this case, I would imagine both the Parks and Rec Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission before then ultimately coming back to us. And the intent of having that, this is not part of I guess I'll allow for a second.
Yes, let's finish with the motion. I'll second that. Any discussion?
I'll just add to the reason that I think it's important that we have this a formal process is that, this is the first of its kind. That's part of the growing pains of doing something like this. We need to make sure that we get it right, and so that others can follow suit. It will be a little bit of a learning process for all of us to make sure that we do that right. But I don't see that there's any reason with the dedication that the foundation has shown that cannot be done in a cordial manner, so that we ultimately get back here so that we can make a final decision and recommendation.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Gentlemen, again, thank you very much for coming. I know you've been working on this for years. I really would like to see this get completed in a way that you're comfortable with.
Sure, yeah. I'd just like to thank all of you for your time, your kind words, and all the heartfelt things that you said in honor of Shane's life. It means a lot to me in here. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we will take a 10-minute break, recess, and resume at 7:51.
What time did you say you were coming?
1 minute. No, actually, now.
But he said that it would not be taking or a part of the land that we are using. So we want to just make sure that we're doing a great partnership. And Scott Pastore did say that he does want to partner with the association. It's not trying to be in contrast with. So I was hoping that maybe to make sure that nothing was decided on or voted on without this partnership of collaboration beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, good thing it is.
We will start momentarily here. We're waiting for everyone to get seated.
Yes, I will. I will send it.
Madam City Clerk, please let me know when you're ready. All right, we will call the meeting back to order. We are on item number 15 now, consideration of proposed changes to the land management process. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Michael Mays, our Community Development Director, will kick off the land management process discussion.
And as always, we are keeping count of how often you say the word plan rather than process. So please
Thank you,
proceed.
Mayor. Good evening, members of City Council. And now that you've planted that in my head, I'm sure I'm going to say it several times.
I always appreciate trying to do that to you, but you're seldom tripped up by it.
So the land management process is a unique process for Boulder City. It is an opportunity, a very early preliminary opportunity to have the council evaluate the potential use of city-owned land within Boulder City. And this is also a chance for the community to weigh in very early in the process, long before potential zoning entitlements are even considered, long before leases or the sale of property is considered, to give the council, the planning commission, and the public a chance to review those potential uses. And so before you tonight are 3 properties. And first, just want to bring to your attention the existing list of properties that are on the land management process list. So these are properties that the City Council has added to the list in the past. And we keep this list on the city's website so the public can always review it, as well as the potential properties and the maps that are corresponding with it. So the first one I wanted to touch on this evening is what we refer to as 22-03. This is the Elite RV Resort proposal. They are looking at the potential lease of approximately 74 acres southwest of the intersection of Adams Boulevard and Veterans Memorial Drive. What they're proposing is a high-end RV park and cabin rental development. As you can see on the map, this is divided into two potential areas for this development. The current master plan designation for this area is Parks and Recreation and Open Lands, and the current zoning is a combination of Special Recreation Area, SR, and Interim Study Area. The applicants are here this evening after I do an overview of all three of the proposals. They have a presentation they like to present to the council tonight and be able to answer questions in more detail about their proposal. The second one for your consideration is what we're referring to as 22-04. This is the 16.3 acres of city land located southeast of Boulder City Parkway and Veterans Memorial Drive. The intent for this property is for the potential sale and development of this property for a grocery store and associated retail uses. The City Council on March 22nd approved Resolution 7404 authorizing a ballot question regarding this property, and so this is the concurrent consideration as part of the land management process. The master plan designates this area as open lands. The zoning is government flood control, but in staff's review of this area, we believe it could be developed for a grocery store and associated retail and would not need to be zoned as such. And then the third property for consideration this evening is what we're referring to as 2205. Over the last several months, there's been inquiries by both the Boulder City Mounted Police Unit and the Boulder City Horsemen's Association. And this approximately 7.6 acres would be considered for those uses, so corral uses. The property, which is directly north of Corral Road and the corrals, is designated in our master plan as open lands and public, quasi-public use. And in the zoning ordinance, it is zoned a combination of R120, which is single family, and government municipal GM. Typically, with this initial discussion before the City Council, this is your opportunity to make a determination if you want to entertain these uses to be added to the land management process list. If you want to consider that, you would make a motion to advance one or multiple of these parcels onto the Planning Commission. Planning Commission would hold a public hearing. Property owners within 300 feet would be notified of that hearing to discuss the proposed uses of the city-owned land. Planning Commission would make a recommendation. It would come back to the council. And at that point, the council would decide whether to formally add these parcels to the list or not. So again, this is the initial opportunity. Council can decide to advance one or all three. And I can answer any staff questions before I would turn it over to Elite RV. We have Gary Baldwin and Frank Manzullo with Elite RV to provide a presentation and answer questions.
Thank you. And yes, I think it would be best if we take these one at a time and make a decision before moving on to the next proposed parcel. Any questions regarding then LMP 22-03 for Elite RV Park? I do have some questions about this. You know, this, the gentleman from Elite had come and spoken with me anyway, and the city manager had provided some materials. I think the concept of this is good. There have been already a couple of different locations suggested for this. I am concerned with where this is being presented as far as it being sort of part of Boulder Creek Golf Course. That, you know, I would like to get some input as far as golf course operations and how that might be impacted. I don't know if that's one of the things that we can put forward if we make a referral on this to the Planning Commission, but I think that's a significant factor of how this may fit in, being essentially part of the golf course. Another factor that I think we have to keep in mind for anything of this size, you know, we are in a water emergency already. I know that the gentleman from Elite, Mr. Baldwin, they've already spoken about, you know, means that they are going to take to try and lessen the impact on water and on power. We do get a certain allotment from Hoover Dam for power, which is at a much lower price than it's available elsewhere. When we bring development to Boulder City, that lessens the amount of cheap power that's available to those folks that are here already and has the potential to increase rates for others if we need to purchase more power outside. So again, I know that they've tried to address that in their proposal. Once again, I would like to see if that is possible for the Planning Commission to look more deeply into those types of requirements for a development like this. Any other council member Bridges?
Thank you. I do, you know, the issue was brought up of the fact that airplanes take off over that area in between where they're going to be. The significance of an environmental study. I mean, a serious environmental study, not only noise pollution, noise, and the effect it would have on these vehicles and the residents, but you're talking about cabins. I saw that in there. Now, this would require utilities to be brought, you know, water, electricity, sewer. I know that people who drive those vehicles are looking for some place to eliminate their black water and their gray water and so on. That's going to take a toll on our systems and again the water. I would really I would hope, I would expect that even if this made the list, because just because I understand, just because something goes on the list doesn't mean it's going to happen. That it's just saying, these are some of the things we're considering. That there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. You know, people have talked about, you know, is this leapfrog development? Is this, are people trying to sidestep our growth ordinance? And I know that issue has come up in terms of RVs and, you know, how strictly can you enforce people coming and they're only allowed to stay a week, and that doesn't mean drive around the block and come back and take another spot, and now you're calling you got a P.O. box locally and suddenly you're calling yourself a resident of Boulder City. So there are lots of issues that I have with this that would need to be addressed, and and especially an environmental study on water, sewer, and noise. Not the noise caused from there, but the effect of having airplanes flying 400 to 700 feet overhead for people who have these very, very expensive RVs. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
I know in looking at the materials provided in the packet that you provided a presentation, and you did discuss water in there. Would you want to address that? Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly turn it over to them so they can provide their presentation and answer your questions.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, council members, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Gary Baldwin. I'm a 21-year resident of Boulder City, and I have to admit I've enjoyed every day living in this community, and I have a lot of respect for this community and the citizenry within this community. One of the things that we kind of address our project as a resort, not a park, because we really are striving to have a very high quality type facility here. I think without further ado, I'd like to go through it in the sake of brevity. I'd like to go through our presentation rather quick which I think we have sent to everyone here, the mayor and the council. So real quick I'd like to go through that. Can you get me to the first?
The one with no arrow.
Oh, thank you. We have to go all the way back. Oh, yeah.
That's quick.
Okay, thank you. First of all, you'll see as we go through the slide presentation here, it's kind of we've kind of really spent a great deal of time, and as I think most of you can attest to, is the fact that we talked to the council members, we talked to executive staff, we talked to the city manager, the director of development, the people in Parks and Rec. And I have to say, what you're seeing here is probably our version 12.0. And I'm proud to say that because we were so excited about it. We didn't want you to think you were just giving us lip service and we're going nodding our heads. What we did with my team, once the mayor, the city council, or somebody in Parks and Rec made a comment or a suggestion, we took that to heart. So I want you to know that what you're seeing is a lot of adjustments. And, it's kind of my saying, it's better to kind of float downstream than it is to try to swim upstream. So we did take every comment that everyone said to us, and we took it to heart, and we adjusted the program and the project accordingly. So I just want to say that sincerely. We wanted to create a destination resort at Boulder City to attract visitors to the city, not too big, not too small, and to leverage all of the assets that Boulder City does have. And the amazing thing is, when we started listing out, we really got very excited about whether you want to go canoeing or kayaking or jump out of an airplane or go on a trail or a bike, on-road or off-road biking. We really got very excited because we know that when we bring people now to Boulder City, they can be entertained, they can enjoy the city, and what we've done is to not increase that growth potential type situation, but have a tourist come, a lot of tourist money. This is going to generate a tremendous amount of tourist money. I mean, and we have no intentions to open up another pizza place or a bar or anything of that nature. So when we bring the customer in, the tourist in, we're going to send them out into the community to spend money. And there's more that we can address regarding this. One of the things that we are going to address a little heavier on is the one column where it says golf, because from our perspective, we think, in the brief conversation we had with Parks and Rec, that we can really enhance the activity that's happening at Boulder Creek today and make it an exciting event, an overnight stay of amenity that will be first class. I can guarantee you that. As you well know, we want to kind of have that sustainable income situation, so we are looking at a very long-term lease. The reason that is that this is a substantial capital investment for myself and for our investors. So I wanted to say that. Build a beautiful property. We will add to the economy in construction jobs and permanent jobs. I think that now we're probably at maybe 35 to 40 full-time employees, and they'll be, of course, highly paid. And the job market within the city, it's not that we're going to give them preferential treatment, but our first goal would be anybody who is qualified in Boulder City, we'd like to be able to hire them because of their expertise in the community and the information they can pass out to the tourists. We also, which my associate Frank will more address, some of the things that were mentioned to us from the council very, very early on was the eco concerns, the sustainability for the water, the electricity, the landscape, the view sheds, which were very concerning at first because we just were sensitive about blocking anybody's view of the vista view within the community. So we kind of manipulated that a little bit. And like I said, this is our third or fourth revision as far as making this all happen. So without further ado, and for the sake of brevity, I'm going to introduce Frank Manzullo, and he'll take it from there. But once again, thank you. And I just want to say it's been a real pleasure working with the city. And, you know, I know there's people say, oh my God, the city, but I got to tell you what, I've enjoyed every meeting that I've had with the mayor, city council, city manager. The wonderful lady from the Chamber of Commerce has been very, very wonderful. And once again, we've kind of educated ourselves, and we've taken that education and applied it to our project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. And thank you for the team that came together to put this proposal together. We appreciate it so much. We appreciate the opportunity to present this. My name is Frank Manzullo, partner in the development. So this is the map that we just saw, the two parcels that we're looking at currently. And what we're going to do is take a look. If I can scroll down at all, thank you. To see where it is in the cityscape. You see the first parcel there, which is right in the center of the 27-hole golf course. Obviously, would not push past that landmass, and then additionally, as we look at the development, that development on the far west side would go approximately 350 feet west of the furthest west point of development. So I want to mention that because there is a lot of talk of the leapfrog. What we really want to do is build a trace that really just hug and appreciate the golf course, not go too wide so that both people on both sides of the street have a really nice view, and obviously on one side of the golf course there. But obviously we're sensitive to that. Our first inkling was to look down I-93, and Mayor quickly corrected us on that, and graciously so, because it really pointed us towards the golf course property, which makes a lot of sense for us. The property itself would have 293 spaces or lots, and as shown, that has 60 park model cabins, which are small, depending on how these are going to be regulated, which the language is not quite on the books yet because this is a very new concept, but these smaller dwelling units, or not dwelling, when you see smaller cabin stays, are going to be built with that standard of adhering to the allotments. So it's 30 per year, and it may take us a 2 season to get to that 60 units, but overall that blend is about 20% of those cabins and 80% RV space. The resort, as we call it, is going to really have resort amenities. So 8,000 square foot clubhouse that's going to have wellness center. You have a poolside access, and really taking advantage of the incredible views right here with the full resort pool, an infinity pool type of scenario. Obviously, where we're located here, we have access to Boulder Creek Golf Course right out that corner. That actually goes to the driving range, and the tunnel goes directly under to the golf center, which is exciting. We would anticipate having a sort of a closed circuit golf cart rental there, maybe do something with the golf carts with the club across the street so that people can get around the community. In addition, we have a tourism booking center, which we're excited about because that's something that would be manned by the Chamber of Commerce, but actually sit on premise so that when people came to the property, they would be able to actually book tours and see what everything we have to offer. Additionally, what we would do on our side is to take, when we go to the Chamber of Commerce and we see the wall of pamphlets and we see each of those hundreds of pamphlets that represent hundreds of local businesses and local jobs, what we want to do is incorporate that into our booking system so that when people come to the website and book, oh, by the way, let's plan your itinerary too. So there's all sorts of activities that we can book and take advantage of everything that the city has to offer. Just to get kind of a look and feel, so we're not thinking about a rundown RV park. This is going to have some stature to it. Design-wise, I'm not. I know Councilman Adams. We talked about the plants and everything, and we're absolutely in agreement that this would be a zero grass, native species type of environment. We want to have something more like this. There's a park down in Southern California that actually has more of your cacti and has a little better feel. This particular one has a build out that would be if we were to take an RV lot and then also have a park model cabin on it and rent it as an entire unit, something like that. Some of these would have outdoor kitchens, nice paver stones. Again, not your typical RV park, if you will. Additionally, the luxury park model cabins, these are in the 350 square foot type of range. There's something that can be built off site, transported on site, or built on site. But these are something that, if I have somebody that wants to come up for the weekend or a group of golfers that want to come up from Arizona and spend the weekend and go golfing with us, they need a place to stay, they don't have an RV, here we are. Again, if somebody in Las Vegas wants to come out for the weekend or come spend 3-4 days out here, they have the ability to do so. We call it the exhale factor. When somebody comes over from Railroad Pass and comes up the hill and Vegas just fades away in the distance and you can just exhale. I feel it every time I come into this town. And it's amazing that we had the opportunity to do that and to showcase this. Resort policies, something that we're very sensitive to as an operator, and additionally, we're sensitive because you're sensitive, and there's been a history in the community that we definitely want to address. So some of the rules from the get-go are minimum RV size and maximum RV age, and that's because we want to maintain a certain standard of excellence that our, frankly, high-paying customers are going to expect. The order of average night rent is going to be approximately double what the national average is. So when we ask for that money, we have to deliver a certain expectation as well. Maximum length of stay. This is something that has been the ire for the city, I know, for some time in the RV park world. And frankly, for us, we're on board with that because as operators, the shorter the stay, the more people pay. So it's our job as marketers to go out and convince and bring as many people to town as we possibly can, but it really behooves us to have those short stays too. So we have no problems with putting rules on the books that we would have anyway and working in conjunction with the city to make sure that those rules make sense for everyone involved. And let's nip anything in the bud that may rear its head. We want to take care of that right up front. Additionally, no long or permanent stays. We know, just as you mentioned, Councilman Bridges, about that some jurisdictions and some situations have served to skirt those rules. We can enforce those. There's any number of ways that we can do that using technology to enforce that and monitor that, report on that. And additionally, since this is a lease, we don't own the land, there will be no condo lot sales. So there's no parceling this off and selling those lots. And frankly, that doesn't serve our business model either because we would make more money renting them than selling them. One thing that Gary, my partner, he just has this love for this city. He's convinced me, or tried to convince me for years and years to move from, I live just across the street from Henderson, to move out here. And some of the things that we talked about as this was developing are things that he's talked about over the years. The ability to reach out to tourists, to say, do you know that there's 8 million people a year that go and visit Hoover Dam in the National Rec area at Lake Mead? In the meantime, we have 42 million people that come to visit Las Vegas each year. And much of the ire of the Chamber of Commerce, and I know some locals here, how many buses a day drive by? How many millions of people drive by Boulder City from point A to point B? Man, let's reach out and grab some of them. And by having some forward-facing tourism welcome center, I think we can do that. In addition, it serves our needs as well, because then we have people there that are knowledgeable about local activities, and if they want to plan a trip, plan a vacation plan as they're driving through, or they're staying with us and they want to actually start booking activities, we're right there. We're ready to rock and roll. Water usage has been a obvious major item on this, and when we look at 293 sites, at 100 gallons a day, that would have a max capacity, if we were operating 100% capacity, of 29,000 gallons per day. With the other things there, it adds a little bit, but we end up around 11 million gallons a year. That sounds a lot if I'm trying to fill my bathtub, but versus the 2019 Boulder City usage of just under 3 billion gallons, we represent less than 0.5% increase in water usage in the city. Obviously, that being said, everything that we do will take into consideration from low flows and all the city ordinance, everything that we need to do to lessen that even more. Water consumption, if we were to use the piece of land for other types of developments, how we compare, a Boulder City home currently uses 187 gallons a day. Hotel room is a little less than that, and a Class A RV, a resort, a lot at 100% would be 100 gallons a day. And obviously, we're going to be running at about hopefully 60 to 70% occupancy at any given time, so at less than even more. So we're less than half of what the average Boulder City home would use on a per lot basis. Additionally, with electricity, we want to tap into the existing power grid at our expense, but we're also going to actually take a look at the feasibility of putting in our own solar, because that equation is getting crushed down more and more and more. Solar is becoming more and more an advantage, more and more practical. Again, the electrical usage is similar to water usage, whereas look at the average Nevada home and an RV, a Class A RV, we're about half the average electricity usage on a per day basis. And then the view shed. The views here are obviously an interesting subject because there are such spectacular views. And if you go to Boulder Creek now and you go out on the Lanai and you look at the sunset and the mountains, it is just fantastic. And frankly, views sell and we love it and we want to take advantage of it. That being said, we don't want to obstruct anyone's view. So what we've done is we've gone along Highway 11 and up 173, 93, and taken a look at this from every vantage point to see where we'd actually marry the landscape. The fact that we're actually at the top of a hill, but there's ridges of trees where the golf course is, actually helps us blend in, as well as if you're driving on the main street into town and you look to the south, you're actually at an elevation that ground slopes about 4.5 degrees, so you'd actually look over the entirety of the complex. Additionally, it helps us with the 2-story build max. That helps that as well. And looking up from the south, we don't lose any views because the mountains behind the highway, behind the, as we go towards Boot Lake Canyon, just rocket up out of the land, and we don't lose that view of that mountain either. Finally, our neighbors to the north here, the vets, it was a tear-jerking night to hear some of the stories and to think of some of the stories that I've heard about events, that particular event in Afghanistan. And we have a strong spot in our heart for them. And my partner Gary has just such love for them, and he talks about them every day. And one small thing that we thought that we could do for our neighbors to the north there is they have a program that's called Send the Smile to the Vets. And what they do is in all the Southern Nevada veterans homes, they have LCD screens that run throughout the day. and you can text in or send in a photo of you just saying hi to the vets, waving, whatnot. We would take that on to do a photo booth type of scenario where people can make signs, hold signs up, and then you have a camera system there or an app so that they can upload those. And then those pictures would go up on the screens right across the street just as a thank you, just to say thanks. In addition to, there's a potential business relationship there, because when folks come to see somebody that lives there, their family members, their friends, where are they going to stay? We know that there's a shortage of hotel rooms or things like that in the city, and the cabins can provide some help for that. Next, we're going to look at the location. These are actually the parcels that we're looking at from a high view. And then when we drop in the acreages, that's what we're looking at. And a lot of that, I'll brevity again, because we've seen a lot of that already. The economic impact for Boulder City is threefold. The resort development itself is going to create construction jobs. It's also going to produce rental income for the city, which is really interesting because we're starting to really diversify the city's income so that it isn't just from all energy leases. Attracting tourists will create demand for local businesses and diversify tourist income. We're actually going to have some new tourist hubs that don't exist today. If somebody wants to come in and those guys want to come up with a couple dozen guys from Arizona and play golf, they may call, and I've heard they've called the golf course and say, where can we stay? The hotel's booked up. Where's the closest hotel? And they're getting pointed to Las Vegas, if anywhere, and they say, well, either they're going to stay in Las Vegas or they're not, but in any event, the city loses out. Additionally, from a job creation standpoint, Gary mentioned that, but we also think that's going to have downstream effect in the local businesses. So we're not here to compete with anybody. We're here to just complement and really send people to some of these new businesses, or excuse me, to some new people to these existing businesses that can always use the traffic. Additionally, we want to create new business creation. So if there are individuals that have a bent for doing things like somebody to do hair in a salon or nails, we could create businesses for those individuals that want to do that. We're going to need services like dog grooming and dog washing. We're going to need businesses like RV washing or repair, things like that, so that we can work with somebody locally that wants to start that on that road. We're there. Finally, the impact on golf. I know that this has been it's been a road with this particular property with the golf club. And at the end of the day, we're only here to really help the golf club and really help the city. I mean, at some point, we want to take a really deep look at what the actual impact would be, because we know that we can leverage what's already there, but we can boost and stabilize the profits at that golf course and the municipal course. Greens fees, merchandise, F&B, the ability to help with wedding planning, things like that, and really generate a new form of income called golf tourism, which doesn't really exist here today. Additionally, we want to have a place for snowbirds. When's the last time a snowbird came to Boulder City and stayed here for a week or two? That's a question. But we know they said that the Jamboree, the kickoff of the RV season, is in Quartzsite in January every year, which is about 3.5 hours south of here. And then hundreds of thousands of RVs, or I think it's about 100,000 RVs get together, 100,000 RVers, and then they travel north as the sun approaches. And we want to be one of those stops in the spring and the fall for them. Come, stay with us for a week, see what we have, enjoy it. And finally, we came up with these plans. We sat down with some of the folks in this room, and ultimately we knew that it has to come down to the constituents. It has to make sense for the people that live here in Boulder City. And we're planning on doing some research, and fortunately for us, your offices had already done some of that. The 2018 strategic plan, there's a survey of the city residents. There are 202 responses, and 16 of them made comments about tourism. 16 of 16 were for tourism in some way, shape, or form. And I just grabbed a couple of quotes here that I'll read. If we want to limit new housing developments, which I believe is the right way to go, yet still have a thriving economy, we must focus on tourism. We need RV resorts. Encourage overnight stays, encourage recreational opportunities. Make an attraction visible from I-11 you can see when passing by Boulder City. and maintain small-town atmosphere while appealing to visitors and tourists. So the theme was residents want growth, and they'll support something like this, but they want it to come from tourism. And we're in agreement. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the additional information. Any other questions? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the time that you have, spent in talking with staff. We had met, several months ago when you were initially, kind of looking at this. So I want to thank you for all the time that you have put into this. I know when we talked, I explained, look, I'm not the RV guy. This isn't something that's going to service me or many people that I know personally. But I have heard from a number of people in the community that this concept certainly is a desirable one in Boulder City. But as we heard in opening comments today, and I have heard from some people, there are some concerns, right? There always will be when it comes to expansion and growth with Boulder City. And what I said in that first meeting that we had, and what I'll say again here is, ultimately at the end of the day, it's really going to depend on whether or not you have the buy-in from the community or not. We've already heard some concerns with, is this leapfrog development? I do appreciate that it is very minimal in impact, that there is a purpose to hugging the current development that is already there. So I'm not too concerned with that. But at the end of the day, it's not about what I think is or isn't appropriate. It's about what the community thinks is appropriate for itself. If we're already starting to hear a little bit of pushback now, as we go through this process and it becomes more, the public becomes more aware, be ready to hear those concerns, or whether or not you want to, move forward right now, and knowing that there might be some pushback, or, I know you guys have gone back to the drawing board a bunch, and I'm sure you have looked at every other possibility, but, just making that consideration for what is going to be best, for you to be able to move forward with this. Because again, I've heard from everybody who has commented on it, they think that this is an appropriate type of business model for Boulder City. So, but that's part of the land management process, is getting that buy-in from the community. With regards to water, at the end of the day, the Colorado River simply doesn't have enough water to continue providing to all of those who have come to depend on it. That's just a matter of the fact. So I appreciate the concern here, or the attention to detail, and trying to make sure that you mitigate as much, especially with appropriate landscaping. But even if you guys have a minimal impact, the golf course, which you'll be right next to, that is a huge, has a huge water demand. There might be a time, sooner than we want to face, in which we don't have the water, or it is deemed that it is not appropriate to be using what little water is available or left on some of our parks and courses. So in that situation where maybe we do not have the water, it is determined that is not the best use of what little water is available to continue to maintain these courses. How does that impact this model? These are questions that I would have and hope that could be addressed, and whether or not the permanence of something like this.
Absolutely, and we internally have given thought and ideas to that. Not today, but we have contemplated that.
Excellent. So again, at the end of the day, it's I think you have done a tremendous amount of work to make sure that it is as minimal in impact, but also to create as a befitting business here in Boulder City. But concerns have already been raised. I wouldn't be surprised if more concerns aren't. This is going to be part of the process. So I'm curious to hear where the rest of council is on this one, because I want to get there, because I've heard so many good, a lot of good response, but I'm not sure if I am just yet, because it is sizable in its ask.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I am of the generation of people that I do know lots of people that have put their homes on wheels, and they do travel around a lot, and some of them with very, very nice homes on wheels. But I think I know it's an odd thing to question, but you talked about water and you talked about electricity. Now, what about sewage? And I know that's an ugly topic, but it's significant. Is it you guys creating a sewer system that goes into it? Is it underground tanks? I mean, there is an environmental impact of having people come with their RVs and needing somewhere to put that stuff. And I'm just curious if you've looked at other models of this kind of business, what do they do? What do the temporary places? I know, if they're permanent RV parks where they've been there a long time and they've figured something out. This is taking land that has not been used for anything before. And where do you go with that?
Well, there's two potentials there. You can hook into an existing municipal system, which we took a look at, and the other way is to put in a septic tank system. Either one we'll look at to understand its viability. We have not done those studies yet.
I know septic systems are not popular because they do not recycle the water back into the lake, the river, anything. They just accumulate. That I would say that's a pretty big task to look at that. Also, I have a question. And you were commenting about not having hotel rooms available. Do we know what our normal occupancy rate for hotel rooms in Boulder City is? Is there a number? I mean, do we commonly have all of our hotel rooms full? Mr. Community Development.
I do not have that number at hand, but that's certainly something I can provide to the council.
Yeah, I'd be curious, is that in terms of a need for cabins, for additional hotel room space, which is what it would be competing with. And I think it's a neat idea because I do know that people who drive those kinds of vehicles do have money to spend on other things, do spend money on other activities and play golf and do stuff like that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Jorgensen?
I was just looking at the land that's right in the middle of the golf course. And I know that you mentioned that you've had a chance to talk a little bit to the people involved there. I was just thinking about errant balls, things that just, when I play golf, happen, probably not when other people do. And I was just wondering about that scenario for that.
Yes, it is a unique situation there. We're fortuitous in that you play golf. The way that the golf course is laid out, most of the holes you're actually driving away from the resort, or you're in the case, I don't know which hole is which here, but in just above the orange area there, you're chipping into that area. So there's no areas where you're going to be directly alongside of a tee box that you drive into. But additionally, you're going to we'll have an expert come in that does this to make sure that everything is situated where it should be. And if we have any safety issues that need to be addressed with park model cabins, walls, things like that, safety glass, those types of things, those will be viewed.
Yeah, because it looks like that you're butting right up against the practice green, right? On the one side.
Yeah, at the southeast side of Area 2 there, yes, that actually goes up and there's a berm there and then falls away quite a bit. And that'll be a question for the golf course too, is where do those balls go?
Okay.
I wouldn't be optimistic about where balls go because I've played. Councilmember Fox?
Yeah, I do like the new layout for the design that's inside, I guess, the middle of the golf course. I like how it's intertwined. I think the water conservation is going to be a big one, which I know I spend a lot of time in my trailer, and people in trailers don't wash dishes, take showers, and do things that you do in a regular house, so that the consumption is very, very light. Again, it's just educating the people and making sure it's being spread. But yeah, I can't wait, and I really look forward to this because it is something that Boulder needs.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you very much. With regard to the water, as it was brought up, septic and Councilmember Bridges pointed out, septics are not really favorable. We are actually working on upgrading our water treatment, wastewater treatment facility so that we can actually use reclaimed water for, things like our golf course, like our parks. Being that you are right there, that might be something that for your irrigation purposes or needs, obviously, need to be well defined which pipe is which, but certainly I think that also is something that should be looked into to further mitigate the water uses. If we are going to have it available and you are going to be right there where it is intended for some of this water to be used, then I think we should also hopefully look into that as well.
We look forward to that.
Anyone else? Thank you. I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Mays on this land management process. I know at this point in the process, we're pretty much just making a referral to the Planning Commission for them to do their review on this. What sort of, if any, direction can we provide the Planning Commission on special concerns that we may have at this time that we would like them to address?
Certainly, I think with the motion that would be offered, raising questions that you would like to review, understanding that this is at a very preliminary level. This is not a review of a detailed project, but to highlight the areas of concern that you would like the Planning Commission to review and opine on in their recommendation back to you.
All right. Any other questions? I would like to then make a motion to refer LMP number 22-03 to the Planning Commission with emphasis on determining, perhaps through review by the Parks and Rec Commission, the impact on Boulder Creek Golf Course, the impact on existing city infrastructure, and the impact on water and electric allocations. Is Mr. Mays done writing? It's a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Again, Mr. Baldwin, I appreciate the presentation. We'll see where this goes. I think that it is something that would be a benefit for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Mr. Mays, would you like to address the next one, LMP number 22-04?
Yes, so this is the 16.3 acres located southeast of Boulder City Parkway and Veterans Memorial Drive. This is the property that would be considered for a grocery store and associated retail uses.
Thank you. I know we have discussed this in the past as we were formulating the ballot question. Any questions or comments at this time? Again, I think this is one of those where we're asking the residents what they would like to do. We have discussed the ballot question several times. We have determined that if the principal use for the property is not a grocery store, then the land would not be sold. So I would make motion to refer LMP number 22-04 to the Planning Commission, pending outcome of the ballot question results.
Second. No? Is that a motion or no?
Madam City Attorney?
Yeah, the land management process is the.
You want to keep those separate from the ballot question?
Yeah, yes, it has to be on the land management process, as it was it's a concurrent process, so they have to be separate.
All right, I'll reform the motion then just for referral of LMP number 22-04 to the Planning Commission.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And Mayor, just a point of clarification, this process will be concluded long before the ballot question in November, so you will have that feedback prior to that.
Thank you. All right, LMP number 22-05. This is regarding areas around the existing corral area. I had conversations with city staff about this. I know Mr. Mays had done some additional follow-up on it. My concern about the way this is in our packet right now, it appears to be one request. It's actually two separate requests. What I would like to propose is to withdraw this at this time for consideration, have city staff work with both the Mounted Patrol and the Horsemen's Association, make a determination of which parcels would be desired by each of those groups, because they don't necessarily coincide with one another. They are not necessarily aligned with one parcel of land. So that would be my request, would be to withdraw this at this time, allow city staff to work with the two different groups, and have this brought back for consideration once there's a better understanding and more information in our packet as to what the uses of this parcel might be. I will make a motion then to withdraw LMP number 22-05 from consideration at this time.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? See, that just shortened your presentation, Mr. Mays.
Thank you.
Thank you, as always, for your explanations on the process. Not the plan, but the process.
And I did not use the word plan.
I did not catch a single time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 16, appoint ballot question committee members. Madam City Clerk, would you like to explain this further?
Absolutely. Per NRS 295217, the City Council is required to appoint ballot question committee members to prepare arguments advocating approval and opposing approval for each ballot question. At the April 12th meeting, one applicant was already appointed to write arguments for the sale of 16.3 acres of city-owned land and spending up to $7 million from the Capital Improvement Fund. So that leaves an appointment needed to write arguments against both the 16.3 acres of city-owned land and spending up to $7 million from the Capital Improvement Fund. And then there's one additional ballot question that was approved, asking if clean energy technologies and natural gas be approved. And for that particular question, we need somebody to write arguments for and against. We do have applications submitted by Aaron Aborn and Lorene Crum. So the city clerk's recommendation would be appoint Aaron Aborn and Lorene Crum to prepare arguments against the sale of 16.3 acres of city-owned land. Appoint Aaron Aborn to write arguments against spending up to $7 million from the Capital Improvement Fund for public safety facilities. And appoint Lorene Crum to write arguments in favor of clean energy technologies and natural gas in El Dorado Valley. and appoint Aaron Aborn to prepare arguments against.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, would you prefer to have a motion on A, B, C, and D separately?
Either that or you can just make the motion to approve the recommendations provided to you.
Anyone wishing to make such a motion?
I would like to make a motion to accept what's the word I'm looking for? The entire list as specified.
Yeah, recommendations by the city clerk.
Recommendations by the city clerk for those to be appointed to write those arguments.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you, Madam City Clerk. We'll move now to item number 17, City Manager's Report. Mr. Tedder.
Good evening. I'd like to turn your attention to page 244 of your packet. This is the ARPA funds page. It's been updated based on the additions that you made earlier this month to items to be spent out of the ARPA funds. So this page does show the restricted funds versus the unrestricted amounts, obligated and spent. Other than that, I have nothing else to note, but I stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the City Manager's Report? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That brings us to our final public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak in the final public comment period may do so on any subject. Each speaker will have up to 5 minutes. As always, we ask people to be civil and concise. Anyone in chambers that would like to speak in the final public comment period? All right, we will take anyone wishing to call in at this time. The phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, this is our final public comment period for the City Council meeting. This is the final public comment period for the City Council meeting. Anyone wishing to call in at this time, the number is 702-589-9629. Madam City Clerk, did we have any emails for the final public comment?
Yes, there was one written public comment submitted.
Please
from
go ahead.
Chris Shea. Please reconsider your votes approving the dog park baseball field combination on fields 1 and 4. The Veterans Memorial Park should be a place where complete ideas and complete projects be made. The combination of a baseball field and dog park pose multiple risks seen and unseen. Just because it is the easy, cheap thing to do does not mean it's the right thing to do. There has not been a problem for 20 years putting up a portable fence for Little League, high school, or tournaments. There is already an existing dog park literally 1,000 feet away. If a fenced dog park with grass is absolutely needed, there are many other parks that should be considered before taking away an area from kids. Examples of parks would be Lower Escalante, Lakeview Park, Del Prado, or Oasis. All of these parks have irrigation, areas that can be repurposed, and not directly across from the existing dog park. Please reconsider jumping into the easy thing to do. $72,000 can be used in so many better ways than doing half job that doesn't fully make anyone happy.
Thank you. All right, hearing no others for our final public comment period then, we will close the public comment period and move to our council reports. Councilmember Adams.
Nothing to report other than I'd like to wish my beautiful mother a happy birthday. Sorry I couldn't make the dinner tonight, but I'll make it up to you a little later.
Thank you. Councilmember Fox.
Nothing for me.
Councilmember Jorgensen.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Bridges.
Just the regular report on the fact that emergency aid is available for those who face an emergency and may need help with rent or utilities or food. They can call and make an appointment, and nobody in this town should be evicted or have their utilities shut off because they're facing a financial emergency. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to mention again that next week is the Public Service Recognition Week, as well as the Professional Municipal Clerk Week. Again, our employees do a great job. One other item that is starting tomorrow is the NFL Draft. It's a big to-do this year in Las Vegas. They're closing down portions of the Strip, so if you work down there, prepare for some difficulties getting to work. But you can download an app to your phone. That gives you free admission to it. And the LVCVA is planning to make this a very nice party. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.